We'll be getting started here at 7:30. For anybody early joining us, we're just getting the live stream going. Join us here at 7:30. We got an action-packed evening tonight talking about what's going on in the state legislature. Everybody, we're going to start here in just a couple minutes. Thanks for joining early. Please share, please like, please subscribe. We get this out there. We're going to have a great audience tonight. We have a lot of great information to talk about, some really important bills. We will be taking questions from the chat. So the chat on YouTube, please get in there, ask some questions for our guests. We have Senator Byron Pelton and Representative Anthony Hartsook joining us at 8 o'clock. And Hannah Goodman and myself will be going over some of the bills of the week, some of the most important legislation going through our state legislature. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We got a lot to talk about. It's going to be a quick, a quick run through on a lot of bills. So hopefully you have fun here. We're going to get started shortly. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get started here. We have a great evening tonight here on the legislative live stream, our weekly informational and empowering video to get you to get participating in our state government, have a voice down at the state capitol, speak out for liberty, and get informed. We have Hannah Goodman, a chairwoman of the Libertarian Party of Colorado, as the co-host tonight. Hannah, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's going to be so much fun. I'm looking forward to diving in to all the good bills that we're going to be going over, and we're going to have some fun with some legislators later.
Definitely. We got a lot of good bills, a lot of bad bills, a lot of ugly bills, and we're going to have some great conversations and debate with our state representative, state senator that are joining us this evening to kind of talk about some of the controversial bills they've been involved in. Really encourage people to put questions in the YouTube chat. We'll be answering those. We love to interact with the audience here. So we got a lot to cover. So I think we're probably going to just go ahead and jump in here and see what's going on down at the state legislature. So, 515 bills introduced. Can you believe that? We're 9 weeks into the state legislature, 515 bills from 100 legislators. Hannah, how can they possibly have rational and good debate on these?
They can't, and it feels like a system for just ramming things through. Interestingly, all counties, they were all issued books every year of all the session laws that passed each session. And well, it was all like legislation in general, but some of the books are really small. I mean, I have books back to 1883 all the way to I think the 80s. Some are double volumes, right? I would just be really interested to see what those books would look like in the past 10 years if they still publish them. They do not, and most counties have got rid of those books. But anyway, that's why I have mine.
Nice. Very cool. Very cool. Well, just wanted to let people know if you want to learn how to speak at the Capitol, I put a guide together, freestatecolorado.com/testify, freestatecolorado.com/testify. Good resource there for you to learn how to speak in committee hearings. And that's mostly what we're going to be talking about tonight is committee hearings, because committee hearings are where the public is invited to speak either in person or remotely. You can provide testimony, let these legislators know what you think of the bills, whether for better or for worse. So that's where we're going to start here at 7:30, looking at the bills of the week. 8 o'clock, our guests are going to join us. They'll be here for about a half hour. We'll get back to the bills and then give you updates on the big bills. So we got a lot going on. We're going to talk about a lot of different bills tonight. So it is recorded. Please share this with everybody you know who's interested. And you can always go back and look at the information because we're going to speed through a lot of this here. So you ready, Hannah?
Yep, I'm ready.
Perfect. So let's start with Monday. So tomorrow, March 3rd, House Committee Room 107 down at the first floor in the state capitol, the Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources Committee, hearing three very interesting bills for us libertarians and liberty-minded Coloradans. So let's dive in. First one is 1190, expanding the Colorado Cottage Foods Act, otherwise known as the Tamale Act. That's the name that Ryan Gonzalez has given this bill because it's going to allow the sale of foods that require refrigeration, which currently it is illegal, believe it or not, in our wonderful so-called free state. It is illegal for people to be able to buy food out of a cooler, out of somebody's vehicle, because it's not refrigerated. So what do you think about this one, Hannah?
I am very excited about this bill. I've been really enjoying Ryan Gonzalez's first year in the legislature and the bills that he's been bringing. This definitely aligns with his vision. Speaking to food, deregulating markets, expanding liberty. It's wonderful. I have a friend who has a cottage foods like regulated store. And so this would make things a lot easier for her to operate her business. So for me, I'm all about this. In fact, I'm registered to testify tomorrow online in support.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. I'll be speaking in support as well over Zoom on this bill. This is such an important bill. We need food freedom here in Colorado. This should not be a controversial issue. I know people are concerned that the food places they're making the food isn't inspected or blah blah blah. But hey, you're taking your own risk. You're an adult. You can make your own decisions. And whatever kind of food you want to buy, you can go off reputation reviews, whatever it is. We don't need the government protecting us from somebody's little cottage food business.
Yep.
So perfect. So this bill's being heard tomorrow, Monday, 1:30 p.m., House Committee Room 107 in the House Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources Committee. Please sign up. People speak out. This is a good pro-liberty bill. It's really exciting to be able to talk about a pro-liberty bill because there's so few of them that seem to be heard in committee these days.
Yes. And support Ryan Gonzalez and his work for liberty as well, you know?
Definitely, very important. So, also in that same committee, a very interesting bill here. Don't know what entirely to think about this. This is House Bill 1203, misbranding cultivated meat products as meat. So, of course, there's this lab grown meat is a big issue recently. And this bill would prohibit the misbranding of cell cultivated meat as a meat product, requiring cell cultivated meat to be clearly labeled as cell cultivated. I kind of like that idea. I don't necessarily want to be eating lab grown meat, and I do not want people trying to pass lab grown meat off as organic meat. So, but is this the proper role of government, Hannah? What do you think about this one?
Probably it's not the proper role of government, but in the current environment, that is the Colorado government. I feel like if this bill were to pass, it wouldn't be the worst bill to pass. In fact, I think there is probably benefit, like you say. I definitely want to be knowing what it is that I'm purchasing, and I do not want to eat lab grown meat. I live in beef country. I want beef, and I want to be sure that it is 100% what I think I'm buying. Transparency is never really bad, I don't think.
Yeah, interesting bill, a bipartisan bill. We see Democrats Karen McCormick and Kyle Mullica on the bill. You see the House Minority Leader Ty Winter and Senator Rod Pelton. So I think this bill has a really good chance of passing. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some amendments, but nonetheless, an interesting bill. I don't know if that this is really what the government should be focusing on, but nonetheless, an interesting bill we wanted to make sure people were informed about. So being heard in that Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources Committee, 1:30 p.m. Monday, March 3rd. So yeah, be there if you're there for that committee. Might find it interesting. One more bill being heard in that same committee, another pro agriculture bill. The Senate Bill 39 says that agriculture buildings would be exempt from energy use requirements. So I like that idea. Generally speaking, the bill clarifies that agriculture buildings are not covered buildings, and therefore owners of agricultural buildings are exempt from the energy use, collecting, and reporting requirements. Now, of course, I don't think we should have energy use and collecting and reporting requirements for really any building that's privately owned by an individual, but I guess this expands freedom in a very small way. What do you think about this one, Hannah?
Yeah, I definitely think it expands freedom. It is a small way, but it is a good use of time, I guess, if we're going to be ramming through, I don't know, 900 bills this session. I wouldn't hate this one to pass either. And it's good to see my rep, Dusty Johnson, actually doing something even minutely related to pro liberty. I'm proud of her. She's growing.
Yeah, some of these freshman legislators definitely need some guidance, need some help. It's unfortunate we've not seen the best pro liberty votes in bills from some of these people, but nonetheless, interesting bill heard Monday, that House Agriculture and Water Natural Resources Committee. So a lot going on, three really interesting bills. A great thing is the Tamale Act is supposed to be the first one, so 1:30 p.m. Hope to see everybody online, maybe in person. And folks, you can always email and call the committee members, the people who are actually going to be voting on these bills. That's important as well, just at the legislative website there. So let's move on to the House Finance Committee here. Another interesting committee. This is a very powerful committee. A lot of big bills go through this, and this is a jam-packed committee hearing on Monday, March 3rd. So many bills, but I really wanted to focus on one bill, 1208, that's gotten a lot of news and a lot of interest from people all across the state, whether it's restaurant workers or others. But this bill is very controversial. We've seen protests, we've seen restaurant workers, we've seen a lot of the more progressive left push back against the state for pushing this bill. So this bill, what concerns the tip offset associated with the local government's minimum wage, and in connection therewith requires a local government that enacts a local minimum wage that exceeds the state minimum wage to satisfy certain requirements in determining the amount of the tip offset associated with the local government's minimum wage. So, from what I understand, reading some news articles about this, is that basically minimum wage could go down. Minimum wage could go down for restaurant workers. Maybe it's too high now. I'm not sure. Probably is. I don't like minimum wage generally speaking, but minimum wage itself could go down to make up for, and then tips making up more of that money. is how I understand this bill. And folks, a good tip is get into the fiscal note. The fiscal note can sometimes get you a little bit more information in a more clear way. So just real quick, it says that specifically the bill requires any local government that has enacted a minimum wage to enact a law to impose a tip offset for food or beverage employees equal to the portion of the local minimum wage. So not entirely clear there exactly, but what do you think about this one, Hannah?
I think it's interesting. I don't know that it's actually going to solve any problems because wage laws tend to just manipulate and exploit the market. Um, I've worked food service before, and I there's been times where I've worked and we received less than minimum wage because of the tip offset, and I wasn't super crazy about that. Uh, but I don't know. I'm kind of mixed on it.
Yeah, this bill, here's a little bit more information, maybe a little clearer for people. It says on average, tipped employees in these counties and municipalities will see a reduction in wages paid by employers of 319 per hour. For example, the statewide minimum wage for tipped workers is currently 11.79 per hour. For example, Denver's current minimum wage is higher than the state's minimum wage by $4. Under the bill, Denver will be required to impose a tip offset of $7.02, up from the current tip offset of $3.02. The higher tip offset will reduce the minimum wage for tipped workers from 15.79 to 11.79. So you can see why a lot of these restaurant workers, a lot of the progressive left is against this bill because it seems to decrease minimum wage. I expect there to be a lot of amendments on this bill, especially knowing who's on it, seeing Steve Woodrow there, Judy Amabile, some of the more radical types down there at the state legislature. So we'll see what happens with this one. But yeah, I mean, the real minimum wage is zero, as we all know. If they can't afford to hire you, they can't afford to hire you, and you're not making any money. So minimum wage, like you said, manipulates the market. So we'll see what happens with this one. Perfect. So moving on, still on Monday, a lot going on. This is in the House State Civic, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee, Legislative Service Building A. That's the building south of the state capitol, starting at 1:30. A lot of interesting bills. If you believe in liberty, this is something to pay attention to for sure. Let's dig in with the first one, House Bill 1193, the Voter Transparency Protocol Act. And this is from freshman Representative Larry Don Supla. He's been doing a great job down there, definitely pushing a lot of pro liberty legislation and some great speeches at the well, especially in defense of our Second Amendment rights. But this bill does a lot here. Let's go ahead and jump into the fiscal note because that's a lot to read, make it a little easier there. The bill requires the use of distributed ledger voting for all elections conducted in the state. A distributed ledger allows information to be entered into a publicly available common database from multiple locations at different times. The ledger is public but uses a code that makes the personal information on the ledger private but still verifiable. The bill requires all voters to re register to vote annually. Kind of like that idea. To obtain a mail in ballot, voters must provide specified information in voter verification on the Department of State's website or in connection with payment of an electricity, gas, or water bill. What do you think, Anna?
I actually really like this. I have to say, I have loved everything I've seen come from Rep. Sukala, and I'm really excited to have his energy in the legislature. While I'm not super sure about the database and that kind of a thing, that kind of goes over my head, I really like the second part of that fiscal note. The bill requires all voters to register annually, and to obtain mail ballots, you would have to provide specific things. I really like that, but election integrity is important to me. And I'm just not crazy about our elections here in Colorado. And I feel they're very unsecure. And, the Libertarian Party has sued the Secretary of State to clean up the voter rolls. Obviously, that's not happened, but they've been basically told to do it. So this is kind of one way I could see that really effectively cleaning up voter rolls.
Definitely. I think it's a good bill. I think it would be a great bill for election integrity to restore that confidence we in our elections. But of course, like Fly Pilot Explorer in the comments says, they'll never let that pass. Yeah, this
Amen.
bill's this bill's dead on arrival, unfortunately. But it is good to see so many pro election integrity bills this year, and good to see them fighting the good fight. Also, in this same committee here on Monday, March 3rd at 1:30 p.m. in LSBA, the House State Civic Military Veterans Affairs Committee is freshman representative, former Elbert County Commissioner Chris Richardson's bill, House Bill 1191, elections to fill county commissioner vacancies. Of course, vacancy elections have been a huge controversy over the last few years, where at one point we had nearly a quarter of our state legislators who were appointed by vacancy committees, not actually elected by the people, and then they become incumbents, where it's a little bit easier for them to win re-election. So a lot easier for them to win re-election. So this would be a good bill. I really like this idea. This bill would eliminate the vacancy committee process for vacancies and requires that vacancies be filled by a vacancy election. Now, this is just for county commissioners, but nonetheless, we shouldn't be having these backroom deals where they're picking and choosing who's going to serve. Actually, having an election where the voters get to decide who serves. That's what's supposed to happen. And I like this bill. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. It's probably not going to pass either because it's so good. But I really like that idea. And also, precedent is precedent. So, if we could set the precedent that that's how we handle vacancies on the county level, it's going to be easier to bring that to the state level and it's going to make sense. So, I really like what this seeks to do. I actually do really hope that it passes. I just doubt my government and the people there making law.
Yeah, unfortunately, looking at the bill there, Representative Richardson's the only one on the bill. He doesn't have any other sponsors at all. So don't think this bill's going to make it. You'd really need a bipartisan support for this. But, I know the Democrats that are in the majority are interested in doing something about vacancies. At least they keep talking about it like they are, but we'll see when that actually happens.
Don't hold your breath.
And so in that same committee, Representative Stephanie Luck does have another bill to modify the requirements for filling vacancies for certain offices. So House Bill 1100 being heard on Monday in the same committee here does kind of similar things. It would require that a vacancy committee selected by a central committee to fill a vacancy also consist of, at a minimum, the individuals elected as delegates to the applicable jurisdiction's district assembly. So it's really just expanding that pool of people who would be voting on a vacancy committee to make that vacancy committee larger and basically include the party delegates. So I think this is a good bill. It seems like a very safe bill to try and cause some reform over the vacancy committee process. So it would be nice if something like this changed. But of course, let's take a look to see if there's any other sponsors on the bill, and there isn't. So, it seems like a pretty reasonable piece of legislation to try and make some change in vacancy committees and filling vacancies for legislative offices. But yeah, I don't think it's going to go anywhere. What do you think?
Definitely not going to go anywhere, but it is refreshing to have nice legislation that we would want to have pass entered. So
Definitely. Yeah, I'd say a good bill there for sure. People show up, speak out, get involved, know what's going on in your committee, in your legislature, in your state government, know who your state rep and state senator are. You should be talking to them pretty consistently, developing that relationship, letting them know what you think about a lot of these important pieces of legislation. And folks, we got a lot of bills to talk about, so we're going to keep flying through here. So we're looking at House Bill 1246. I thought this one was interesting. Bob Marshall's trying to paint himself as a more of a moderate Democrat. So his bill, House 1246, would limit peace offer partisan political activities. So basically, if they're in uniform or using government resources, they'd be prohibited from using or authorizing the use of public resources for the purpose of campaigning for or against the nomination of election of a candidate and engaging in partisan political activity while wearing uniform required by a political subdivision of the state. So basically, I mean that police officers couldn't be wearing their uniform if they're out doing political work. So I'm very curious to see if this bill is in response to something specific. I don't know if he had an opponent this last year or something that maybe he was unhappy with. I'm not entirely sure the background, but what do you think about this one?
um I mean, I guess on its face, it sounds fine. From a libertarian perspective, we definitely think people should be able to make political speech. But at the same time, should somebody representing the government be making political speech? That's a whole other thing. It's kind of like we want that neutrality of religion, we want neutrality of ideas in the government. My God, that's never going to happen, but we can at least try, right? So I don't hate it. I'm not super excited about it, but I don't hate it.
Yeah, I could see that if somebody's wearing their uniform and they're out campaigning, it kind of gives it some extra weight to certain voters. So I could see them trying to kind of level that playing field and say, hey, if you're using our taxpayer resources You shouldn't be using that for political campaigns. So
Yeah,
I can kind of support that, but I wonder if there's another purpose at play here.
yeah, that would be, I would be concerned about that.
Right. Also, Finest City Cycling in the chat says, does this mean they couldn't testify against gun bills? Which is important because a lot of these sheriffs and police department chiefs will show up and testify against the anti-gun bills, saying this is not a good idea. And I don't think so. I think this is really just for campaigning for candidates. So that's really it is partisan political activity. Speaking on legislation wouldn't be considered partisan, I don't believe. So I don't think it would make too much of a difference there. So interesting bill there. Lakewood NM says should also restrict using uniforms for ballot issue campaigns. Yeah, that'd be good as well. So here we go. One more bill in this committee, House Bill 1265. So this is just on Monday, folks. A lot of bills being heard this week. We're in the thick of the legislative session, but you can have a voice. You can speak out, show up and speak up, do remote testimony if you want. But House Bill 1265, modification of county commissioner elections. This is an interesting one here. And if you look at the sponsors, I think there's a better chance that this one's going to pass. But similar to changing how county commissioners are elected, this would basically totally upend and create more representation. But at the same time, I have some doubts on it. So let's take a look here. The bill requires counties with populations of $250,000 or 250,000 or more, excuse me, not dollars, to have 5 commissioners in 5 districts. The bill outlines 3 methods for electing the 5 required commissioners. They could have 5 districts, 3 commissioners by 3 districts, and 2 at large. You can have 5 at large and use ranked voting. That's interesting. So basically, this is trying to increase representation. So there, right here in the background on the fiscal note, sometimes these fiscal notes give you some great details. There are 8 Colorado counties with a population greater than 250,000 people, which is not including Denver, which is a consolidated city and county. Of the 8 counties, Adams, Arapahoe, El Paso, and Weld already have 5 commissioners. This bill would impact the remaining 4 counties that only have 3 commissioners. So Boulder, Douglas, Jefferson, and Larimer would then go from 3 to 5 commissioners if this bill passes. So interesting. I kind of like the idea of increasing representation, but I do not like the idea of the state government trying to force certain things on the counties. I like this idea of local control. But what do you think about this one, Hannah?
Well, I have two questions it kind of brings up. First of all, why are we suddenly seeing a rise of county commissioner election related legislation? And then second, um, why I just want to know the why of what they're trying to achieve with this. Do you know what I mean?
Right. I get what you're saying. And I'm curious. I know we get a lot of people from Jeffco in the chat. I wonder what they would say. Would you rather see Jefferson County go from 3 to 5 commissioners? Do you think that would be an improvement? Would there be a better chance of getting maybe a pro liberty commissioner? Wouldn't really help with the majority, I don't think, but maybe it would help just by increasing those seats. I don't know. I'd love to hear what people think.
Because on its face, I like that. I mean, increasing representation is important, but why are they wanting to do it? What's their actual motive? It's not what they say, it's what the effect they are trying to achieve. That's the thing.
It's a good point. It's a good point. You never can trust these politicians stacked in the right way. I know. Yeah, I don't know. Interesting bill. Very interesting there. Jody Nickerson doesn't like the ranked choice voting part. She says that would be illegal. Um, Dave Doe says, why not increase the number of House delegates as well? I kind of like the idea. Forrest Mommy says commissioners are the money launderers. Um, Jacob Luria says, no, we'll add at least one Dem commissioner. So, they'd get more there. So interesting, very interesting to see what could potentially happen there. So, more government jobs is what it mean. Very high paying jobs, which
I
is
guess
not
that's
necessarily a good
true.
thing. Right. A jobs program for politicians is what it would be. Let's move on to Tuesday, folks. We're flying through these. Got a lot more to talk about tonight. Our guests are going to be joining us shortly. So stay tuned. This is going to be really interesting here. But we're talking about the House Judiciary Committee meeting Tuesday, March 4th, upon adjournment of the State House. We identified at least 5 bills here that we thought we wanted to make sure you were aware of. This first one is definitely a medical freedom bill, and I was really excited to see this one, especially after all the COVID years that we had to experience. House Bill 1255, Healthcare Provider Right to Exercise Conscience. This bill creates the Medical Ethics Defense Act. It recognizes that a healthcare professional, healthcare institution, and healthcare payer has a right of conscience. It defines conscious to mean the ethical, moral, or religious beliefs or principles held by a healthcare provider, and recognizes institutional entities or corporate bodies as also having a conscious as determined by reference. There we go. And also allows a healthcare provider to refuse to participate in or pay for a medical procedure, treatment, or service that violates their conscience. So, of course, I would think of abortion as probably one of the big things, but think about any COVID type stuff, any end of life type stuff. It would protect these healthcare workers from being discriminated against because they have strong moral, personal, or religious views. And it's funny because you see these bills, and then you look at the sponsor. I'm like, okay, I see it's Stephanie Luck, who's the representative sponsoring this bill. It's probably a good bill. It's always kind of a good guide. She's one of our Liberty leaders down there at the state legislature. So I like this idea. I think this is a good bill. What do you think, Hannah?
I absolutely love it. Especially, think about it's concerning protecting a healthcare provider's right to exercise their conscience in providing healthcare, right? So, for my family, for my oldest son, it was in good conscience that a doctor told me not to vaccinate him again, right? Now we're seeing all these quote unquote measles cases again or whatever, and everyone's and we have that same pressure with the COVID vaccine and all of that kind of stuff. So we need to be able to give doctors space to be able to practice medicine and according to their conscious thought, right? You want a doctor actively, consciously engaged in their work. And when you cripple and handicap their capacity to make decisions through their different lenses that they hold personally, I think it's great to be able to protect that.
100%. I completely agree with you. Have doctors and healthcare workers should have agency. They should have control over what they do. And it's crazy that health has become so politicized. It should not be. But of course, if you look here, there's a keyword there: license and regulates health facilities. So if we just got Colorado CDPHE, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, they just need to stop issuing these licenses. Of course, from a libertarian perspective, these occupational licenses are total garbage, and really
Yes.
getting rid of these regulations and let people make their own decisions. Let these doctors succeed or fail based on their own merits. But so this is a bill in the step in the right direction. It doesn't address that underlying problem, but of course, we don't really expect a lot of the legislation down at the Capitol to do so. So I'd love to see this bill pass. I think it'd be a great bill, but I'm doubtful that the Democratic majority in our state capital are interested in seeing healthcare providers have a right to their conscience.
Definitely, definitely, they do not want that.
Perfect. So I think we're going to go ahead and bring in our guests here. I see them in the in the waiting room here. So thank you for waiting patiently there. We're going to go ahead and admit you here. So we will be taking questions from the chat as well. So really, people get involved, share the link out there. But we have some state representatives joining us tonight to kind of talk about what's going on at the state capitol, give us some inside information, talk about some of the more controversial bills we've seen, and provide some perspective. So we really appreciate it. And looks like we got Senator Byron Pelton there joining us first. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. We appreciate you taking the time. And we got Representative Anthony Hartsook. How are you, sir?
Doing well this evening. How's everyone doing?
Doing great. I don't know if you've met Hannah Goodman. She's the chairwoman of the Libertarian Party of Colorado.
And the constituent.
Yep, I am. You are my senator. Great to see you, Byron. Senator.
Good to see you, Hannah.
Yes.
You can call me Byron. We're family out here in Eastern Hawaii.
I know. I'm like, I don't ever mean to not call you senator. I'm sorry.
It's okay. We call him other things, but he's in the Navy. I was in the Army.
It's very nice to meet you, Senator.
Pleasure.
Well, really appreciate you joining us every week during the legislative session. We do a live stream giving people the information and empowering them to get involved in our legislative process. We really want to highlight some of the important bills being heard in committee. We get 300 views a week right now about to get people engaged and excited, and so we really appreciate you taking the time. But let's just start off. Either one of you, what's one of the most important things that people in Colorado need to know about what's happening at the legislature this year?
Go ahead, Anthony.
Oh, thanks. Well, I mean, we're obviously in the House. I think we're pushing some around 500 bills that are going through right now, and that's just way too many. So much of this stuff we'd be here all night getting into it. The biggest thing for folks to pay attention to is on our side, our caucus is working constantly for common sense legislation, just things that We've got our fee of the day where we're constantly hitting out there where the Democrats have, well, whatever the legislation is, it's increased fees. And I mean, they don't call them taxes, they call them fees, but it still drives up the price for the consumer. That's the net result. And those are the things that we're fighting. Whether you get down to healthcare, small businesses, education, all of those realms, that's what we're looking to go after.
I would say that the thing that we're seeing is some more fights on the climate change angle, where cow farts are always hurting the climate for some reason that they seem to think so, and everything else like that, and green energy projects and that sort of thing. And Hannah can tell you, it's like, we are starting to put up a lot of wind towers out here, but that's a private property rights issue. But they wouldn't be around if it wasn't for the subsidies from the federal government. So it's getting to be more and more fights about taking away land use, and taking away the local government's ability to put up those big projects. And that keeps going on and on and on. So.
Yes. So I know there's some things that libertarians come together with Republicans on. And then there's, of course, a few points that we disagree on.
Mm-hmm.
No, I actually don't think we don't see the same problem. I think we see the exact same problem. I think we just have different ideas about how to solve it. And I think that's just like a political thing in general most of the time. How do you reconcile a libertarian emphasis on personal responsibility with calls for public safety measures that sometimes limit individual freedoms?
That's when you have to walk the fine line, Hannah. That's the tough part. Remember, I told you when you were at the Capitol, I said, "Boy, we hate this gun bill because you and I both recognize the personal freedoms." And then I told you, I said, "You're really going to hate the marijuana bill I'm on." So,
like, well, we can't. They can't all be tens.
We can't have it all. I understand that. And the thing about it is that with our jobs, we really have to listen to our constituents. And I know that a lot of superintendents and that sort of thing have come to me and talked to me about high potency marijuana and the problems they're seeing in the schools with psychosis. Our mental health problem keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And that's kind of where you have to figure out a way to walk a fine line. And that's what we attempt to do. I can tell you that I have that marijuana bill 76. I am on it, and I am on it to make sure that we can change it, because there's a couple of things on there I didn't like, and we are going to change it. I can tell you that I have had several meetings with the marijuana industry and with lobbyists to make sure that we are not putting them out of business. That is not the attempt here. We don't want to put them out of business. Banning anything is a bad thing. I think all of us can agree on that. There just needs to be some rules around stuff where we're making sure that that's not getting in the hands of people it's not supposed to get in the hands of. And that's the problem. A lot of the parents that I'm hearing from that have this issue, that have issues with high potency marijuana and getting into their kids, whether it's creating psychosis, I'm not saying they're getting it from the legal stores. They just tell me that the packaging that it's coming in looks like the stuff that's in the legal stores. So somebody is buying it from those stores and then giving it to the kids, which is completely illegal. We all know that. But if you remember, when we were kids, I'm sure somebody bought us beer that was not supposed to. So that was the biggest problem, that, we got to walk the fine line when we try to reconcile that. Anthony, you can go next.
Yeah, thanks. So it's interesting. I mean, if you look in today's age, the virtual age, look at us right now. We're on Zoom. We're in completely different parts of the state, and we can all sit here and go through this. Decades ago, you had physical barriers, whether it was alcohol, tobacco. I mean, look at your Playboy and your Hustler magazines. Those things used to be in a liquor store in a wrapped in brown paper in a plastic cover on the top shelf behind the counter. And the only way you could get that was A, you had to walk in, have your ID, number one, and then number two, you had to ask somebody to get to it. So there was a physical barrier for there. You had the same thing for alcohol. You had the same thing for cigarettes. Well, now there's so much stuff, A, that's online, so much of a black market. But if you remember the commercials that said 1 can of beer, 1 glass of wine equals 1 shot of liquor, the equivalency in the alcohol by volume. So you understood what you were buying. Everybody could kind of get a gauge, and you could look at, especially when it's dealing with spirits, what was something at? Was it at 70 proof, 80 proof, or 90 proof? Now let's take the case of marijuana. Back in the day, the potency they have now, the equivalency. What do you all know? What Everclear is?
Mm-hmm.
Everclear. So it's straight grain alcohol.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking 80,
97
90% grain alcohol, 160 to 180 proof. I mean that stuff is wicked strong. You don't make a mixed drink with it. Marijuana has done the same thing. We've got so far in that potency area that you are now, it's like Everclear. And the amount of kids that are out there this is being marketed to and everything else that is being put out there, there's just not the barriers to get to that. When you start looking at, from a healthcare perspective, what is happening in society, at what point do we say, we're going to incur more costs as a society because of these issues versus if we don't say something and try to put some parameters on here? Nothing in the bills to say, the law was passed, it's an amendment to the Constitution. Hey, adults can do this. Yet the targeting of kids, the marketing of kids, just like the tobacco industry used to do. That's why you don't see ads targeting kids, because it used to be cool and sexy to smoke cigarettes, and then we took all that away. It was the same thing for alcohol. Yet the marijuana industry, we have demonized tobacco, we have demonized alcohol, and the marijuana industry has gotten a free pass. I mean, it's like no big deal. The research has shown now that it's been in effect for well over a decade. What's happening to the kids, schools, vaping. I mean, this is pretty much out of control. And so do we need to tighten up those parameters? And that's where we're sitting at. We're not trying to outlaw anything. We're not trying to say adults can't have at it. We're just saying you got to have these parameters to protect the kids and put out the actual people that what you're buying, the THC content, so you can compare beer, wine, and spirits. So you have that comparison across the board.
Yeah, Brandon and I were talking a little bit, and I would definitely agree with you, Senator Pelton, that you definitely are representing your district with this bill. I'm like, this fits our area perfectly. Like, this is what they want him to do. So it would be, because you're a good representative, and I mean, going back even to your county commissioner days, you've always been known to really represent the people who elect you. I would say that is what makes sense for me, like not rationalizing, but understanding your perspective and why you're bringing this kind of bill and other bills that you've brought that we may not agree on. I still would say you're doing a really great job of representing this district and the way that your constituents feel.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing, is you have to really listen to what they're doing and what they want. But I will tell you, I have constituents that own marijuana shops, and I've been on the phone with them. In fact, I just called them today and told them, I said, listen, we're not trying to put you out of business. In fact, we are negotiating with the marijuana industry constantly, because I don't want to put anybody out of business, for sure. The biggest thing is we just got to make sure that, when dad goes into that underwear drawer and pulls out that high potency wax marijuana, that he knows what it's in it. And that's the biggest thing. So he can have that conversation with his kid or somebody else, or even his kid, if he's 21 and he's living in the house. We need to have that conversation about the psychosis and the effect and the effects on the brain and that sort of thing. So I appreciate that, Hannah. Thank you for saying that, because I've been taking a lot of grief over this bill, and I'm like, my district really wants me to run.
No, for sure. This district loves this. Okay, I'm for sure they mostly disagree with me on this subject, and it's not that I'm a pro or anti marijuana, but I do question because kids are, well, I have a lot of them. We've all been kids. When I was 14, I was running pounds of marijuana and methamphetamines from Denver to Sterling at
Right.
14, right? I don't want my kids, like, my life is not like that anymore. And my kids are not that way. And I don't want them to be, but there's ways to order. Did you know that there is ways to order drugs online? Like, of course. And that is where I'm wondering, are a lot of kids getting like high potency marijuana, that Delta stuff? I don't really know much about it. I know that it's called that. I know that you can order it, and like you can order high potency of that, and that's terrifying as a parent. And like, I definitely understand. I'm very open with my kids in a way that my parents weren't, about the use of marijuana and or any substance before your brain has developed to a certain point. And but that's okay, because kids are going to do whatever they want. How do we really navigate that? It's so tricky, like you say. And
And
I appreciate the sentiment behind understanding that behind the bill.
And I'll be completely honest with you. If the Marijuana Enforcement Division was actually doing their job, we would not have to have this bill. And there was a whistleblower that makes Ripple from marijuana, the Ripple folks there in Denver, who actually went out and did a study and showed that they're not putting the right potency on the marijuana. They're putting marijuana out there that has pesticides on it, which you're not supposed to do that at all. And there's all kinds of problems with what the Marijuana Enforcement Division is doing, which myself and Senator Rod Pelton put in a performance audit request to the audit committee, which was heard last week and actually got approved for preliminary approval. So, I mean, we wouldn't even have to have this conversation if they were actually doing their job. And that's a big issue there.
Well, I think one of the biggest problems with Senate Bill 76, for people who don't know, we're talking about Senate Bill 76, which we'll bring up again later towards the end of the podcast, the video tonight. But one of the biggest problems is it restricts purchasing from adults under 25 years old, right? And we've heard the same argument where it comes to ammo, to guns, right? That was a big thing. They're saying, hey, young adults don't have their brains developed. We hear this on the left, on the Democrats trying to ban ammunition purchases. So to see Republicans kind of use that same kind of talking points to say, hey, we can't have under 25-year-old adults who are adults shouldn't be able to buy certain potency levels. I mean, it's the same kind of logic that you could say, well, what about alcohol? We shouldn't be able to buy high potency alcohol.
Hang on, we're going to change that. So when we had that discussion, the marijuana industry actually showed us where their biggest demographic is 21 to 25-year-olds. So that's why I said we don't want to shut anybody down. We're going to have to change that aspect. Plus, I think that this is the reason why I got on the bill. That was the only thing that I didn't like, was that part of the bill. But I will tell you that not only that is the biggest demographic, but also I don't think it's constitutional, because it was right in the Colorado Constitution where it said 21-year-olds can buy it. So I think that if we try to do this, it'll have to be if somebody wants to do that, they're gonna have to do a constitutional question. So I am almost positive that there's going to be an amendment that does something that takes that out of the bill. So that was something that I have been working on with my negotiations with the marijuana industry.
And let me jump in. I want to clarify something here. You brought up the issue of the brain being developed at 25. Okay, let's make a clear definition between guns and being brought up. I mean, I take my kids hunting. I took them through hunter safety. There's a quantum difference between doing that and teaching them the proper skills on hunter safety versus your mind being influenced. And I don't care whether it's alcohol, marijuana, narcotics, fentanyl. I mean, it doesn't matter. When you get into the realm, and for that matter, you could go into the whole bit of hormones and everything else that they're talking about, that they start working on. When you start altering the mind's capability to do logic and reasoning at any age, but particularly for teenagers, you fundamentally change that brain. And that is why you're now seeing, we saw that huge epidemic. Remember Percocet? It was prescribed for everything, for a painkiller. It is highly addictive. It's synthetic heroin. I mean, but it's incredibly addictive, and it changes the mind in a heartbeat. And so what they're now doing is, oh, let's not prescribe Percocet to teenagers because it changes their mind and makes them much more addictive. You will see that now with whether it's wisdom teeth, broken bones, whatever that. Adults still have a problem, but it doesn't affect their mind as much. And so that break versus guns, I mean, the absurdity to say, oh, you can't handle a gun, that's garbage. I mean, you join the military. I did 26 years in the Army. We don't talk about the Navy, but I did 26 years in the Army. And so you've got kids that are out there shooting. There's nothing wrong with learning how to shoot and being able to do. I mean, those would fall into all the crazy bills that we've been fighting against. But that's very, very different than your mind being impacted by a drug. And that's what we're focusing on, is that impact. And I do want to jump back. Hannah had said something earlier about being able to get things on social media and online. There's another bill Senator Lisa Frizzell and I are working on in the social media realms. And I know it's funny because you'll hear people go scream about First and Second Amendments. And we're like, again, back to the physical barriers, like when you used to buy alcohol or whatever else, you had to go to a counter. Right now, you can go online through social media and you can get anything, anywhere. You can see anything, anywhere, whether you're 12 years old, 18 years old, or 30 or 80 years old. And none of that stuff exists out there to again, put those parameters in there. And so we're trying to get parents to realize, I mean, when you look at half the parents out there that don't know how to get around the internet like kids do, because that's all they've been raised up in school, and the pop-ups that are in school, these are some of the things that we're trying to get people to realize, of going, we're not trying to limit your First Amendment rights. We're not trying to say you can't do things. What we're saying is the industry is deliberately targeting kids. And that, it's just like, again, how they used to do with alcohol, tobacco. I mean, you name it, the vice. It's easier to get kids started younger. And that's what we're trying to put up, kind of like that barrier there.
Perfect. No, definitely appreciate the explanation. Just want to jump over to House Bill 1220, just because I know there was a lot of controversy. I heard about it a lot in our circles in the Liberty community here. The regulation of medical nutrition therapy. I know Colorado is one of the few remaining states that doesn't license nutritionists. And that
Right.
seems to be a good thing, right? If I believe in liberty and freedom, I don't like occupational licenses. I don't like this idea that the government can tell me who and who cannot give medical advice, especially when it comes to nutrition, supplements. We've seen how wrong the government has been on a lot of those issues over the years. So can you either of you or both of you explain about House Bill 1220? Because I know a lot of people don't like it or are really concerned about it.
Anthony, you go ahead and get started. It's in the House still. So,
all right. Well, yeah, we passed it out of committee. And so you bring up a really good point. I mean, again, it's kind of like how we started out this whole conversation, striking the balance. In today's world, as it's always been, well, I won't say always, if you go way back when, you didn't need a license to practice medicine. You didn't need a license to do many things. Arguably, you can look through history and go, and there were people that took advantage of that and put out bad advice and everything else. So now there's thousands of professions, medical, the trades, everyone goes to school, they get a license, they have this level of proficiency. You know, a master journeyman that's an electrician, a plumber, a carpenter. You know, you're not going to hire somebody off the street that can show that level of proficiency to, fix some things in your house. Same thing with medicine. You're going to go and see a medical provider. Insurance and the way the whole market is structured, and this is one of those things, whether we like it or not, and I don't like a lot of the things that are set up here in Colorado. This is one of the more bizarre states when it comes to especially healthcare and how regulations go. But because it's laid out a way, if you go in for cancer treatment and you need, I mean, down here in my district, we've got, some of the cancer facilities. if you go in and you see the oncologist and you're getting treatment and they say you need to go see, they want you to see that registered dietitian and the insurance company's covering it, then everybody's got to be all on the same sheet of music. And that's part of the requirements down from the insurance industry. It's part of the requirements through Medicaid, if they're on Medicaid, or Medicare, if they're on Medicare. So we've got to comply, or providers need to comply with stuff that's put down by the government. A lot of this stuff is to keep people, so providers can get paid and streamline that process, that in this case, the nutritionists are working, because they're working based upon the guidance that's given down in my example of cancer by the oncologist. So that's what they're trying to work in. Nobody is saying anything whatsoever about the folks that are selling the herbs or the other things out in the market. And when people said, they were also talking about the penalties. I mean, it's standard statute. If you claim to be something, a licensed profession, that you are not licensed and qualified in, you get in big trouble for that, whether it's being a doctor, a lawyer, a carpenter. So that's what we're trying to do in this profession, and not do anything with the other folks that are trying to do the other things of healthcare and nutrition. We're not dealing with any of that. We're not saying they can't do that. We're not impacting grocery stores. It's been passed in, well, all but 4 states that have tons of these grocery stores and these nutrition stores. So it hasn't impacted those businesses at all. And we don't see that happening here either.
And unfortunately, it just, because of the way the federal government is set up with Medicaid and Medicare, and also the insurance companies, they require licensed dietitians, and we're only doing the ones that do the medical nutritional therapy. So if you have cancer, if you have an eating disorder or whatever, something that the insurance company would pay for, or something that the Medicaid providers would pay for. So that's all we're doing. We're not touching anything else. And I will tell you that I talked to several of my hospitals out here, and our hospitals are always needing providers. And if they need somebody that is providing medical nutritional therapy, they have to telehealth it in from Denver. So what the hospitals are telling me here out in rural Colorado is that if they have a funding stream, there's a good chance that we can have somebody in-house to do that, where they're actually going to be able to have time and see those patients quickly and that sort of thing. So I sat with the dietitians in the summertime, and I said, I have been controlled by Dora for the last 28 years. It's a pain in the ass. I'm a master electrician. I hate it. I despise it. I said, do you know what you're asking for? And I said that. So, and they're fine with it because they want to be able to be reimbursed and paid from from Medicaid and from the insurance companies. But we're not going to punish anybody else. It's just the medical nutritional therapy is all we're going for.
So that's super interesting. I'm glad that you explained it, because just what I've seen from it, I've been concerned, looking at getting like my naturopathic certification and things like that. There is nutritional therapy that we would do if I should do that. And I would hate to have to go into any more regulation needed. As a libertarian, I hate that. And so I think that's interesting. It's just only for the issue of securing Medicaid and like that, those type of providers. That makes a lot of sense. And yes, I would definitely, knowing the rural healthcare system, because I'm very much in it. Yeah, anything that we could do in-house would be amazing, because it's not their telemedicine from if they tell them. That's a big if, because most of the time you can't get anything done at all. So
and Hannah, you would think I called Brush, one of the bigger towns, and Brush Banner Health, the CEO told me we have to telehealth it in because they're not even in Brush. So that tells you that's huge.
Yeah, it very much is. My husband's very sick. There's nothing he can have done out here. He has to go all the way into the Front Range every time. So anything we could do to not have to drive anywhere is, I'm sure, only we know what that means.
Well, and that and creating jobs out here. I mean, if we could create, I hate having regulation that creates jobs. I do. I despise that. But if that's what it takes to get that job out here, then I guess that's what it takes. So
Very interesting. So we touched a little bit on green energy, and I think that we all fully align completely on that. I really want you to unpack more about the private property issue here, because so my grandpa and I, and you know my grandpa,
I do know your grandpa. Very good man. Very good man.
except for when it comes to wind energy. Apparently, we go toe to toe on dumb things, and he has two contracts for wind towers up in Sedgwick County at Kelly's. And so tell us more about that. It's really a private property rights issue. Tell us more about the mechanics of that, because I would like to know more about that, and I think more people would.
So, as a county commissioner here in Logan County, I was one of the county commissioners that approved an 87 wind tower farm that went in. And basically, what it comes down to is that when you use land use, you're trying to use land use to protect the private property that project's going to be on, but then you're using the land use part of it to protect the neighbor's property as well. So and the worst part about this, and Brandon and Hannah, you both know, you can't make everybody happy, so you do the best you can to walk that fine line. And when we did that project, I actually made a motion to, or maybe I didn't make the motion, but I add the suggestion of actually increasing the setbacks. So the setbacks from a neighbor's property, or from, so that wouldn't be as close to the neighbor's property, because they didn't want those wind towers as close. I couldn't get anybody else to be on my side, and on a 3-member board, that's a losing argument. But I did bring that up. We needed to increase the setbacks, and I was thinking like 200 to 500 feet. I was thinking that if we can put one windmill on every quarter, or every section, or quarter section, or I'm sorry, half section, I think that would have been a pretty reasonable amount of setbacks from people's property, because we don't want to affect the private property rights of their neighbors when it comes to these projects. The trouble is that the Colorado Energy Office, and the communists they are, they want to make sure they take that away, and then make sure that there's only 100-foot setback from your neighbor's property. And Hannah, 2 wind towers have fallen down in Logan County just in the last 2 years. So if that wind tower falls down, it's going to fall on that neighbor's property. That's exactly why you have setbacks, is to protect the neighbor's property, because you want to be able to allow that person on the private property to have that wind tower, but you don't want to affect the private property rights of the neighbor. And so that's and I always try to tell the Colorado Energy Office, we are 7th in the country for green energy production, 7th in the country. And it's because of my district and Rod Pelton's district. Boulder's not doing that because they don't accept anything. It's our districts that are doing that. And it's left up to the local governments to have that decision, because when you have your people come in, we had about 250 people come in for a land use hearing. And when they came in, they told us their grievances. We put like 7 or 8 rules on the project. And it's funny because they always says, well, the permitting process is too slow. Do you know what the permitting process took for us in Logan County? It took us like 3 months to get the permit done, took 6 months to do the project. The number one thing that slowed that project down, CDOT, because CDOT would not get their permits for us to widen the right of ways so those wind towers could turn in on those big windmill blades. That was the biggest issue. So they always want to blame the local governments when it's the state government is the one that has the biggest bureaucracy, that has the biggest problems.
I hate those. So land use, though. So the bill about school districts being able to use school property for housing or something, which we of course have housing crisis, and for sure like rural Colorado feels that, especially if, like Phillips County, we have a huge amount of people and not enough housing. I think it's a creative way to solve that problem, but should the government be doing that? Should we be letting boards do that? Is that sort of enterprising in a sense? And I worry, I don't like my government to enterprise because I'm a capitalist, so what do you think about that?
I mean,
So,
I was one of those, and I just let me finish up, Anthony, just real quick.
yeah.
When I was in Basalt high school, or up in Basalt wiring houses, we actually let Habitat for Humanity come over and build like 7 or 8 houses on their property, on Basalt's property, the high school, for teacher housing. And I was one of the ones that wired in the services. So I see that happening all the time. It's a good way to do it, but I mean, as long as it's left up to the local government, so the local constituency has that decision and can put pressure on those elected officials that they see every day in the grocery stores. I really don't have a problem with it as long as it's left up to them and the state has nothing to do with it.
That's yeah.
So, yeah, thanks for that question, because I was the prime sponsor on that bill in the House. I want to go back a little bit of background, then it'll dovetail into your question. So, like Byron was just talking about, the stuff that's going on. My district doesn't have any windmills where I'm at, even though I've got some rural areas. But directly to my east, I know many of the landowners that are out there. There's a lot of the solar and the wind farms that are out there. Due to the government subsidies and, quite frankly, the open hostility to the ag department and ag writ large. I mean, the 2 largest industries in our state, energy and ag, and this administration, the state administration, hates them. And you got to look at them like, what is wrong with you people? This is Colorado. This is a Western state. This is what we do. That being said, they are picking the winners and losers. In this case, the winners are going to be the green energy because it's ideologically driven, and the losers are going to be the rest of the energy sector. And there's a whole bunch of others. I mean, oil and gas, the modular nukes, geothermal. There's tons of things, but no, we just got to focus on windmills. We got to focus on solar farms. Who does that help? It helps the people that are in that, which is the front range folks. I mean, it's so ideologically driven, it's ridiculous. Now you get into your question about the 1006, the one for the school districts. We ran that when Rep. Lugans came to me, and I've worked with her before. So there's what was surprising, and this is the stuff you got to wonder about. You had talked about the government regulations. Back in the day, the state, for whatever reason, there's nothing that we could find historically, but passed a statute that said the limitation was 10 years with a business. Didn't matter what the business did, it was 10 years. And so I'm like, well, let's just get rid of the regulation lock, stock, and barrel. Well, when I talked to OLS, they said, ooh, that dovetails into a lot of other things, and we'd have to change tons of statutes. They go, we can come back and look at that later, but right now we can open it up for energy or housing. And then it got pushed down to the local level to decide who, when, and where they want to do that. And I'm like, okay, that's fine by me, as long as we're pulling the state out of it, and the state isn't the one that is either limiting or dictating your terms at the local level to sign a contract with a business. And whatever that happens to be, I mean, part of me is like, that's on the locals to decide. And people said, well, what happens if they obligate a future board to that cost? I'm like, well, one would assume if you've got local control, you still have to go through your planning commission and everything else. There's going to be a lot of eyes looking at it. And I know when I served as a planning commissioner, we had a master plan. We had to look at the long range things. We had to look at 10, 20, 30, 40. We had to look at 50 years down the line sometimes. When it came to water, we had to look at 100 years down the line. At some point, I don't want the state micromanaging all the local municipalities to dictate the terms, certainly the length of terms on a contract, but say, you guys figure it out. If you want to sign it for 5 years or 25 years, that is on you at that level to figure out what you want to do best for the fiscal, I guess, well-being of your community. And that's where we left it at. So we got rid of that state limitation and said, you the municipalities figure out how you want to go about this and how long you want to sign it for. That's up to you.
Yeah, very interesting. Really appreciate the information there. But the in the chat, the number one question, of course, is the gun bill. It's the last question for you guys.
Oh,
Senate Bill 3 obviously coming up in the House this week on Wednesday. I know there's a big rally.
No,
Oh,
no, no.
what can you tell us about the chances of it passing? What do you think is going to be the ultimate outcome? Do you think they're going to change the calendar again? Just give people the best update, the best information before we let you go here on Senate Bill 3, the worst gun ban in Colorado, if not the country's history.
well, it started in the Senate. You go first.
It was the worst testimony I think I ever heard, with folks going in there and talking about how these things need to be banned. I mean, I just, you guys know what happens. You ban stuff, you're going to be buying it underground, black market. I mean, you're just going to make basically your private citizens into criminals, and that's what's going to happen. So that's the negative aspect of it. So I they changed a lot of it. I have to tell you, my favorite part, Anthony, was in the Senate when we got it, where if you're an honorably discharged veteran, you were the bill didn't apply to you. We got that on the bill, and the Democrats were like, "Oh my God, how did we have that passed?" Because they had enough of their people siding with us, going, "Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We should do that." And then they stripped it off at the end. I mean, I don't know. I got to tell you, it's a bad bill all the way around. I don't think it's right that you got to go take a class to exercise your Second Amendment right. So you don't have to take a class to do this, do you, Brandon? First Amendment, you don't have to take class to this. I don't need a class to tell a police officer that he has to have a warrant before he comes into my house. I don't have to take a class to have that. So I mean, it's just ridiculous to me.
Yeah, that's an understatement. It's in the House. Of course we fought, and it was kind of funny. We just were fighting the ammunition bill last Friday. And a couple of years ago, when we had one of the big ugly gun bills that came in, and it started in the House, and it was rather interesting at that time. We called ourselves the Mighty 19 because there's only 19 of us, and they had their supermajority, and they ramrodded things through, and we sat there and we fought. Well, about 10:30 at night, they're like, "Oh, we can reach a compromise if you guys want to do this," and so we went back to our little caucus, and we're like, no, we're going to fight all night long. So we literally walked back into the House chamber. I was the one that was actually been down in the well, so I had to go back down to hold the well after we came out of recess. And the rest of our group comes in, and they were actually playing the theme to Rocky. And I leaned over and I said, "We're going to fight." And so we went all night long until about 7:30 the following morning. Well, Friday, I reminded all of the newbies that are in there, and I said, in case you think we won't fight, we've done this before and we can go all night long. So we can do this one of two ways. And yes, they still have a majority. They're still going to push the things through, but we fought. We fought that bill. We were in there till 8 or so Friday night. So we were on the House floor nearly 12 hours, I guess. But this insanity of limiting things, and I get it, Senator Sullivan. I mean, his anger, but that is not how you legislate. You should never legislate from a position of anger and hatred. I mean, how many we can look through history and see countless thousands of laws that were horrible laws that were put in from a position of anger and hatred, and that's not how we should legislate. The Second Amendment is crystal clear. You were asking, what do we think this will go? I mean, I think it will pass. Don't know if the governor will sign it. I mean, they've got the bottom line is they've got the numbers to pass it. Does the governor sign it? That part, that's up for debate. But should he sign it, I'm sure that there will be somebody out there raising a lot of money to immediately challenge it. When you look at the standards of what the Supreme Court of the United States has set down, there's no way this thing will stand the test, but it'll have to go through the court system, the 10th Circuit Court, and then back to the Supreme Court. But from the Democrats' perspective, it will tie up time and resources, and that's what they want to do. I mean, and I don't know about the Senate, but I will tell you for a fact, the House chamber, not only have they gotten out and argued in the House well, and they've posted on social media where they say their stated goal is to get rid of every gun from every person in the state of Colorado. That's what many of them believe. And that's what we're fighting. I mean, they're going to keep chipping away at it one step at a time, and we keep fighting back. But unless we change the number of elected officials up there and get some more balance, it's going to keep going that direction.
And that is true. Until we get some more Republicans in the Senate and the House, we're kind of at the, we kept them till 2:30 in the morning. So, and I know Anthony will keep them longer than that. So,
well, if you guys would love to continue the trajectory of winning, I can help. In fact, I helped you flip 4 seats this past year for the first time in over a decade. So it is really lucrative, and it would behoove a lot of sitting legislators and people considering running to, meet with the Libertarian Party and see where we can come together so that we can focus on other things that we would like to achieve. Instead of losing elections, we would like to start winning a few other things. So, it's a mutually beneficial little deal there. And I just offer that to anyone in the legislatures or seeking office. We definitely would love to continue breaking up the monopoly of Democratic rule here in Colorado. We are not enjoying it. I don't think anyone really actually is, if they're honest with themselves. I definitely don't envy you guys. Yeah, I've run for office and I've been so glad I've lost every time. It is a lot of responsibility, and it is a lot of thankless, hard, grueling hours. And my hat's off to you, and thanks for having a conversation. It can kind of feel a little scary because we're not on necessarily the same side, but we definitely are. And so I hope that's your takeaway, that if we're working towards liberty, there's no other side to be on.
No, when I talked to Brandon and called him and said, you know what, let us get on there and explain our side of the things, and he was great. And I was like, I'd like to have more viewers. Come on, let's get more people on here, and bring a little controversy to the call, and let's have more people watch this, because I mean, this is how we do stuff here in Colorado. And I gotta tell you, one of the things that would be nice if things got cheaper would be chickens or eggs. But I just think Colorado's gone so woke that the hens think they're roosters. I mean, that's kind of where we're at. So.
Well, perfect. Well, really appreciate you both joining. Senator Pelton, Representative Hartsook. Any final thoughts there? Any final words here for the viewers watching?
I would just thanks, Hannah. I appreciate the offer. I'm the House Minority Caucus chair, and that's I played a big role last time in helping flip at least the 3 House seats. And this is one of the things we do like to get out there and have these discussions. One of the things that I'm sure you're aware of, down at the Capitol, because of the significant majorities they have, a lot of it is, sit down, shut up, and color, and they can ram things through because they can. We fight back, but everything it's the metro. It's Aurora, Denver, and Boulder. There's a couple of handfuls in the outlying areas, but it's all concentrated there, and they are the thing. And it'll be interesting to see how some of the stuff goes by. I mean, look, Mayor Johnson's getting hauled back to testify in front of Congress,
in front of Gabe Evans.
Yeah. Sanctuary city and all the things. I mean, we're looking at how it's hitting the budget. So these are the things that, back to my opening statement about how we're trying to fight for, more reasonable costs, lower fees, or getting rid of fees. But when we start dealing with these issues, until we get this budget under control and get people, able to make a good living, that just the insanity that it's focused when you've got downtown Denver crumbling and the tax base of businesses leaving to get out. I mean, good for my area, because a lot of them are coming down south where I'm at, down here to Douglas County and the Denver tech area. So I think it's great for us. But Denver is kind of becoming a shell, which isn't good for businesses, and it's not good for the people.
Yeah.
So we're trying to get some of that change. So anything that we can sit down and have those conversations. I'd love to be part of that. And I appreciate that so much.
And Brandon, even if we're on the bad side of you, I really like what you do. I truly do. I love that you get it out there. I love that you're honest about it. And I have to tell you, I agree with you guys more than I don't agree, because I hate taxes, and I cut any tax for any reason anywhere, and private property rights, and transparency of government. I mean, those are three things that I work very diligently on all the time. So I do really appreciate everything that the free state Colorado does, and you guys do a wonderful job. So, and Hannah, you do too. Thank you for making sure that we were successful and working out deals and that sort of thing. I really do appreciate you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm just happy to put a dent in the machine.
Yeah, appreciate you both. We will be talking about your transparency bill later on here because it's being heard this week, Senator Pelton. But we'll let you both go. Get back to your Sunday night. Really appreciate you taking time. I know it's so exhausting during the week being down there. A lot of long days ahead of you. So really appreciate you taking the time to come talk to us tonight, and keep us up to date. If there's any insider information, anything people should know, please let us know. We'll definitely try and get the word out there.
Thank you.
Great. We appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
Wonderful. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Perfect. Well, folks, don't go anywhere. We still got a lot to talk about. We got a lot of legislation to go through being heard this week. So we got at least another 45 minutes, I'd say, to go over this the bills of the week and some of the other bills we're watching. So let's jump back into it. But Hannah, any thoughts on our guest there? I know the chat was extremely active. I know there was a lot of all caps phrases and things in that, and people getting pretty fired up there. Any thoughts on that conversation, Hannah?
Yeah, I think that was great conversation to have. So, one of the most unused tools that we have, and I know that I'm as much to blame as anyone, instead of having conversations, oftentimes we just constantly scream our point on Twitter, right? And it's always kind of different having a conversation face to face and realizing, hey, man, these guys are human and they're trying to do the best that they can. And of course, they may not always have the same idea, but when you sit down and you have a conversation, you start building a relationship, right? And that's what's actually really, really important, is to build relationships with these legislators. That's why it's so important to go down to the Capitol to testify, even online. The more they see you, the more confident they hear what you have to say, the more confident they'll be to really understanding and processing your feedback on the job they're doing. And ultimately, that's the goal, right? Is for us to be heard, and especially when we disagree with the job they're doing. But we should also be, praising them when they're doing things we do like. So I thought it was just really interesting, and I think there's a lot to be gained here.
Definitely. Yeah. It's so interesting too, being a libertarian and then talking to some Republicans, we agree on so many things, but there's some fundamental issues we disagree on. So it's very interesting to explore those, to have those conversations. Like people were saying in the chat, it's not the government's job to be parents. It's up to the parents to have family responsibility. It's up for individuals to make their own decisions, whether it's for food, for medical advice, for whatever they're smoking or drinking, right? It's not the role of the government. And sometimes some of the conservative mindset, they want to be that parent, they want to be that father that's kind of trying to protect the society, but so do the Democrats. So interesting. I really appreciate both of what they both said, and really some good thoughts here. But we got a lot more bills to talk about, so really hope people stick with us. We're having a great live stream. Keep it up in the chat, folks. We're going to go through some of the other bills this week. So we're on Tuesday. You ready to jump back into it, Hannah?
Yep, we're here.
Perfect. So we were just wrapping up our conversation on House Bill 1255 to get people back into it. It's being heard Tuesday, March 4th, House Committee Room 107 in the House Judiciary Committee. Great bill. Next bill in that committee. So, folks, this is all being heard this week down at the state capitol. These are committee hearings. These are bills you can speak on this week. You can provide remote testimony. You can show up in person. This is legislation where you can actually have interaction with those lawmakers, like Hannah was talking about. Sit 10 feet away from them if you can make it in person. Look them in the eye and have that conversation, especially if they represent your community. So in that same committee, a really interesting bill coming up, and I know there's been some different controversy on this one. House Bill 1206, extreme indifference offenses not causing death. So basically, the bill makes it a penalty classification for criminal attempt to first-degree murder under circumstances evidencing an attitude of universal malice, manifesting extreme indifference to the value of human life generally. Oh my gosh, what a mouthful. What does that even mean? It makes it a class 3 felony, a class 4 felony, and a class 5 felony for different reasons here. Now, under existing law, a person commits a crime of assault in the first degree if they do all this stuff here, but the bill repeals the offense. So the bill is basically making a change to the criminal code. Maybe the fiscal note will give us a little bit better understanding here of what's going on, but it changes this classification. So first degree murder attempt is either a class 3, class 4, or class 5 felony. And then first degree assault is basically removed out of that. So it'll be interesting to see what this does. The bill reclassifies the existing class 2 felony offense of criminal attempt to first degree murder to lower felony levels. So that's why there's so much controversy of this, folks. Colorado's experiencing so much crime, especially in the metro area, for the fact that you're saying that they would say the class 2 felony offense of first degree murder is a lower felony level then instead of being class 2, now it's class 3, 4, or 5. That seems to be an issue. I mean, if people are attempting to commit first degree murder, you would think that would be that would be worth having a class 2 felony, but maybe not. I don't know. Of course, I love seeing stuff that maybe creates more freedom, but I don't know that this is a good bill. What do you think, Hannah?
I understand what they're trying to do potentially. So I lived in California for like, I don't know, 12 years or something. And they had a serious problem of overhousing criminals. So what happened in the 90s was the governor had a concrete company, and his company expanded the prison system, and they built and did all the contracts for expanding the California prison system. They built something like 14 to 20 new prisons in that time. They expanded their criminal code, and everything landed you in jail. They had a strike system that if you for your third strike, you could have stole a pack of cigarettes and did life on that. And that's a real case. And it actually was a part in playing and repealing all that. So you have to understand that little piece of history to understand this bill and what they're seeking to do with the criminal code. One way they've decriminalized things in California to reduce those inmate populations. And of course, they always say they're going to start with nonviolent crimes, but generally they start with violent crimes. Ask me how I know that, but that's true. So with that, we're seeing that happen here. They're going to lower some of these things so it manipulates and alters criminal statistics through legislation. And it hits a bunch of those points that you see come out of California. I don't know if any of these people are from California, but they're taking plays out of that playbook right here. So I dislike this a lot.
Yeah, it definitely seems like they're trying to decrease the amount of time that people are in jail. People who are trying to commit first degree murder, attempt to first degree murder, they're going to be let out of jail sooner. They're going to have
It's not
not as
stealing a pack of cigarettes. It's almost killing somebody. Like,
so yeah. So it seems like a really bad bill. I mean, it's crazy. This is one that the voters need to be aware of, that people need to be paying attention to. This is one of those bills that needs to come back and haunt these legislators come election time. The fact that they're making it so that people who are attempting first degree murder serve less time in jail, I think is not something that'd be popular with the public. So that's House Bill 1206, people, being heard Tuesday in the House Judiciary Committee upon adjournment of the House Committee Room 107. Should be an interesting one. And folks, you can listen to these committee hearings. You can show up in person. You can do remote testimony. So anything else on this one, or should we keep going?
just keep going.
Perfect. So yeah, a lot to talk about. One of the most important bills of the week, folks. If there's I know there's some bills that people really want to focus on, but definitely encourage people. 1067. We've had Representative DeGraff join us on the live stream weeks ago to talk about this bill. This bill, House Bill 1067, would eliminate civil asset forfeiture in Colorado. Civil asset forfeiture lets law enforcement confiscate people's personal property, their wealth, their money, their car, whatever it is, without them being convicted of a crime, just reasonable suspicion that they're using that property in a crime, and they can get it confiscated. Should be unconstitutional, should totally be against any type of ethical or moral standard that we have as a society. Unfortunately, that's the reality of where we're at. But Representative DeGraff and Senator Baisley are putting this bill 1067 criminal asset forfeiture to totally reform the process. The sheriffs hate it, the police hate it, but hey, it's a great bill. It's a good bill that's going to restore people's freedom. So really, folks, can't speak strongly enough of how good this bill is. It's one of the signature pieces of legislation from a liberty perspective being heard this year. So if you can make it down to the House Judiciary Committee this Tuesday, upon adjournment, House Committee Room 107, if you can provide remote testimony, please even reach out to the committee hearing members. You can click there, find out who's on that House Judiciary Committee, give them a phone call, send them an email. Please tell them to support this bill. It's an important piece of legislation. What are your thoughts on it, Hannah?
This is definitely the most underrated bill potentially. And I know this week we've got a gun bill coming through. I'm also going to be testifying for that, but I am going to hit this bill. I had tried to come to Denver and testify in person at committee. That's how strongly I feel about this bill. And I live 3 hours from the Front Range. So that is how important I think this bill is. I'm going to be remote testimony this time because I've already had my trip to Denver. With that, I can't stress this enough. If you don't show up for any other bill this week, show up for this bill. The gun rights advocates are going to be showing up for the Second Amendment bill on Wednesday. And that is important. Definitely go to that if you have time. But for sure, make this your number one priority for showing up and speaking to. It's really, really important.
Wonderful. 100% well said. And let's go ahead and move on. Would love to spend more time on that one. But another important bill coming up is House Bill 1227, assault in second degree from Representative Hartsook and Senator Frizzell, who are just talking to Representative Hartsook there. So this would modify assault in the second degree. Basically, this bill would expand the statute to make it a felony to assault an emergency medical care provider when they are providing any function related to medical care. So, don't get me wrong, we have a crime problem, but at the same time, they're creating a carve out that only applies to people providing medical care, emergency medical care. Don't get me wrong, people who are attacking these people, that's not a good thing. But I have some doubts that they want to create a special law there that says, hey, this only applies if you're going against people who are in the medical industry, for example, right?
It prob I'm going to just make some bold assumptions right now. I think this bill probably is going to do something for the homeless problem and the people that are overdosing on drugs. Uh, I don't I don't know that that's actually going to solve the problem. It's just going to create more laws for somebody to then be put through the judicial system when probably they need substance abuse help and mental health issue related help. Is expanding criminal code for people who are already struggling the best thing that we can do? No, and it's not going to solve. I mean, I think we should be concerned about the welfare of our emergency medical professionals, right? They're the ones that deal with these homeless people. They're the ones that deal with medical or drug overdoses. They're the ones that are dealing with a lot of this. And yeah, it's a really hard place to be. But I just don't think this bill is going to help. I think it's only going to harm.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say it's kind of a bill, reactive bill that's not going to cause any good things in society, and of course, giving special protection to medical people while the rest of us don't have that is also something that's not equal treatment under the law. So, um, some interesting bill, House Bill 1227 being heard this week in that same Judiciary Committee. Gosh, this committee is going to go all night, folks. So tune into that one. We got one more bill we want to talk about in this one, and this is the Forensic Science Integrity Bill, House Bill 1275. Now, of course, there's a huge controversy where you had a Colorado Bureau of Investigation, a forensic scientist who was fabricating data for who knows how many years, throwing all these cases into chaos and just not doing their job. So this kind of bill's reactive to it. Don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but just wanted to bring it up because you may have seen that in the news about the forensic science problems and the CBI. And I think the lady's just going through the court process now. She turned herself in and got arrested and this and that. So bipartisan bill will probably pass, probably won't do anything except, focusing on going after people who are committing crimes that they're already committing. So just want to at least bring it up to people. Anything you want to say on this one?
No, that's fine.
All right, perfect. So we're still on Tuesday, folks. Look how these packed committee hearings. There's so many bills being heard. It's insane. These legislators are ramming through hundreds, if not over 1,000 bills this year, maybe even more, maybe even 1,500. We've heard rumors. But look at on this one, I wanted to bring it up because Representative Bradley, who's a former guest and definitely a freedom fighter down there, with Senator Rod Pelton, talking about House Bill 1256. Wanted to bring this one because parental rights is such an important issue here in Colorado, especially because we see the government, so many of these legislators and elected officials trying to take away the rights of parents. So this one, life-sustaining treatment, minors' parent rights. This concerns the regulation of life-sustaining healthcare treatment for minors and in connection therewith requiring the consent of a parent or legal guardian before implementing a DNR, do not resuscitate order for a minor. Now, I mean, I think that's important. I mean, what a nightmare that would be if your kid's in a coma and you as a parent are not having the right to say, no, keep them alive. Instead, they have some form that the kid signed or something like that, and then they let them die. I mean, that's absolutely horrific. So, any thoughts on this one, Hannah?
I think I think it's in the right direction for trying to protect parental rights. And I think that's a really common theme we get from Rep. Bradley. And I think it's refreshing, especially with a lot of things that have come through the Colorado legislature that really take away those rights. So I think it is important.
Definitely, yeah, definitely important. And I think trying to protect parents because I mean, be a nightmare that they terminate they kill a kid who's
Yeah,
on life support without the parent having consent. I mean, that's like the ultimate nightmare any parent could probably have. So
it's execution by the state, really.
yeah, so good bill, House Bill 1256. People support that. That's Tuesday upon adjournment in House Committee Room 112, Tuesday, March 4th. So check that out in the House Health and Human Services Committee. But let's go ahead and move on. More bills being heard Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. in LSBA, Tuesday, March 4th. Uh, House Bill 1247. This is a bill I wanted to bring up. I've been talking about this bill for year and a half. It died last year. People may remember they did it a little bit differently this year, definitely getting more stakeholder involvement, getting the counties and municipalities up in the mountains to support it. Basically, this bill would submit to local voter approval the increasing the taxes up to 6% for people a lodging tax. So right now, counties may levy a county lodging tax of up to 2%. This would go up to 6%. So the idea here is they want to, of course, take more tax money. Thankfully, we have the Taxpayers Bill of Rights Tabor, which means they do have to go to get local voter approval. The voters have to approve this tax increase. But of course, they want to use this for public safety, historical preservation, natural landscapes, infrastructure, blah, blah, blah. But it's a tax increase, folks, and it's a bill that they're trying to push through to give these luxury tourist destination communities more tax money. What do you think about this?
Well, potentially we could lose some tourism because of it if they would pass this and then the local municipalities and counties decide to increase that tax. Holyoke did a lodging tax and it passed, and we've lost. Not that we have tourism, because I don't know if you've been out here, but we do. We do have pheasant hunters, I guess, and so a lot of times the places in Nebraska tend to be far more booked. We actually have suffered a little bit of it. I like to remind people that's why I know that it was kind of a failed thing. So I am, of course, against this.
Definitely. We all know taxation is theft. Creating new taxes is going to just make life worse. These governments probably have enough money already. They're not using it well. They don't need it for all of these things. So definitely a bad bill. House Bill 1247, a bad bill to increase taxes. But just thank goodness we have Tabor, that the local voters would have to approve those tax increases. If we didn't have Tabor, folks, they'd be raising our taxes all day and all night. So still in Tuesday in the Senate State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee being heard at 2 p.m. Tuesday, March 4th, Senate Committee Room 352. Two really interesting bills. Two good pro-liberty bills, actually. You may not have heard of these. The media doesn't talk about a lot of these other bills out there. Senate Bill 156, reducing costs of state regulation. So this would be a good one. So a lot to it. Let's look at that fiscal note. That's our little cheat sheet here to get you that easy summary, a little bit easier to understand. I mean, I love it right here. The fiscal note shows you that impact. The state government's going to be losing $16 million a year. Okay, I love that already. We're seeing 20 to 26 employees losing their jobs. This is a great bill. Just looking at that without knowing anything else about it. This is definitely a pro-liberty legislation, but the bill would repeal several programs and funds, modify occupational regulation and rulemaking, and establish a civil cause of action for individuals to challenge state agency regulation. Look at that. The bill repeals the following entities in the Colorado Energy Office. Oh my gosh. The Clean Air Grant Program, Cannabis Research Optimization, Community Access to Electric Bicycles, Energy Code Board. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is like your Doge. This is the Afuera moment, Afuera, get rid of these things. The High Efficiency Electric Heating Grant Program, gone. Public Building Electrification Program, gone. And folks, Hannah and I are not Republicans, but imagine if we had pro-liberty legislators, whether they're Republican or Democrat. Unfortunately, it seems like they're all Republicans. But if we had pro liberty legislators, I don't care what party they are, but they passed a bill like this, removing all of these things. This bill would also repeal the following entities from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment: Electrifying School Bus Grant Program, Air Quality Enterprise. Oh my gosh, this would be amazing. It would prohibit state agencies from regulating an occupation unless it is necessary for public health, safety, or welfare. That would be amazing. By July 2026, state agencies must conduct a comprehensive review of all occupational regulations and include the following for each regulation. Wow. So this bill here is one of the most pro-liberty bills I've seen. I'm really glad we covered this because people probably have not heard of House Bill 1 or Senate Bill 156 this year, but I really have to send a thank you note to Representative Rebecca Kelty, who won by 3 votes. Thankfully, she agreed to sign the Liberty Pledge, and Senator Janice Rich there. So what do you think about this one?
So, as we've got a Liberty Pledge signer supporting this bill and sponsoring it, man, that just ticked a lot of boxes off the pledge, right? There was multiple things on the pledge that she signed that this bill covers. So I could not be happier. This is amazing. Maybe this is like the unsung hero of the week. I don't know. But I definitely think it's worth. I didn't realize this was coming up. I'm gonna have to testify remotely for this. So expect to see me on the screen.
Definitely people sign this or show up for this one, speak out for this one. Tuesday, March 4th at 2 p.m., Senate Committee Room 352 down at the state capitol, the State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee. Awesome bill. So good. And yes, Dave in the comments says fantasy bill ain't going anywhere. Well, we know that, Dave, but we can still celebrate the positive victory.
Let it go. Green, Dave.
Come on. Hey, there's little to get excited about. It's a good pro-freedom bill that is model legislation. It's a bill that could come back in the years in the future. But how important is it, I think, too, not to get on a tangent, I know we get a lot going, but to see the distinction between what good liberty legislation is? Because people say, well, what difference does it make? Say we have a pro-liberty legislature, whatever party they are, but they believe in freedom. We can have stuff like that pass. It's important to talk about those bills. So how Senate Bill 139 also being heard in that same committee, the grocery and utility bill reduction measures. Now, I was a little confused why groceries and your utility bills are on the same bill, but nonetheless, it's a good bill from Senator Baisley, who just announced he's running for governor. Definitely going to have to talk to him about that. But as you can see, love it. Love looking at these fiscal notes. The state's losing $138 million in revenue, $169 million in revenue the year after that. They're losing 20 full-time employees. Love it. Obviously a good bill, but this bill, let's see here. The bill promotes nuclear energy development and repeals a variety of statutory requirements and programs enacted in recent years, as described below. So there's the nuclear energy, which we've seen some movement there. And then it goes into this where it's going to lower. There's an enterprise. So under current law, individuals who dispose of solid waste pay a user fee based on the amount of waste disposed. The fee revenue is used by the Colorado Circular Communities Enterprise, which was created last year, House Bill 1449, to update and replace the Front Range Waste Diversion Enterprise. The enterprise promotes a circular economy, promoting reuse of natural resources, blah, 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 reduction of greenhouse gases, blah, 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 and all this other stuff. This bill would repeal that, so that's good. That's where they're going to save some money. Look at this bill. Senator Baisley's just throwing it all in here. I thought these bills, they're supposed to be single subject bills, folks, but hey, you got to give him credit for trying. Paper carry-out bag fee. It would repeal the 10-cent bag fee. It would repeal the cage-free egg law. Well, great. This is all in one spot. House bill. This also would repeal the authority of counties and municipalities to levy sales tax on cigarettes. This is
He's
this is
like,
awesome.
I'm gonna use your spells against you, Potter.
This is like Senator Baisley's wish list here this is like a Liberty wish list here. We're gonna repeal the fee and we're gonna repeal this early energy assistance, repeal the retail delivery fee. Great, love it, love it. One of the best bills I've seen. I wish it had a chance of passing, folks. Senate Bill 139 would do wonders.
He's
Thanks,
all
Senator
the
Baisley.
single subject is the economy.
There you go. Right, it's reducing our costs. So another good one. Really excited to see that one. People, please show up and support him and let Senator Baisley, you appreciate what he's doing. These people are under a lot of constant attacks down there at the state capitol. So when you see something good like this, please let these bill sponsors know. But we got State Veterans and Military Affairs, 2 p.m. on Tuesday in Senate Committee Room 352. My goodness, what a crazy bill. Perfect.
That was like the Wild West of bills. I loved it.
That was a fun one. Senate, let's go move on to Wednesday here, folks. Guys, we're only halfway through the week here. This is Wednesday. This is how much is going on down at the state capitol. Wednesday, March 5th, upon adjournment of the House in the old state library there, we're going to talk about a lot of bills here. I'm actually kind of excited about House Bill 1174. Sheila Leader, I never thought I'd agree with her on anything, but check this out. Under current law, an investor-owned qualifying retail utility serving more than 500,000 customers may install advanced metering infrastructure, smart meters, hate those, at a customer's residential property without the property owner's permission, unless the customer opts out of having the smart meter installed. I have opted out. So that's why I'm so interested in this bill. I have opted out of having that smart meter. Okay. The bill prohibits, beginning July 1st, 2025, a utility from installing a smart meter at a customer's residential property unless the customer opts in by submitting a signed request to the utility requesting the installation of a smart meter. The bill also requires a utility that installed a smart meter at a customer's residential property without the customer's permission prior to July 1st, 2025, to uninstall the smart meter and replace it with a manual meter within 90 days after receiving a customer request. The bill requires the utility to establish an online website and provide a phone number by which customers of the utility may submit requests to receive or uninstall a smart meter. So I hate smart meters. I hate the idea that these utility companies, they're basically a government monopoly, can control our energy use and then charge us based on hours and this and that. So the fact that we actually have having Representative Sheila Leader there supporting this opt-in program, I don't know. I like it. What do you think?
So I didn't know any because I'm trying to think. I'm like, do I have a smart meter? And I didn't know it. No, at the beginning it says serving more than 500,000 customers. Not going to happen out here. So we must not have them. And then I was thinking, if we get smart meters before my local government boards start live streaming on YouTube their public meetings, I'm going to be really mad. I hate smart meters. And so this is great because it shows them whether or not the consumer actually wants that thing, right? So that because they'll have to opt in. And so I think that it's really responsible. I really like that.
Definitely some comments from the chat here. Finest Sitting Cycling says smart meters are an example of utilities admitting they can't provide demand. That is very true. Jody Nickerson says, but you pay higher costs if you have the manual meters. And that is true. I opt out of the smart meter. I do have to pay a little extra every month, but I'd rather have that freedom and more control over my energy use. I don't trust these utility companies, these government sanctioned monopolies to have more control over what I can do. So I think it's a good bill. It's sad to see that there's no co-sponsors on this bill, but I hope some pop up there. But I really want to. I'm going to reach out to the bill sponsor in the committee and tell them to support that bill because that's a good one. All right, House Bill 1197, and this one's for Finest City Cycling there in the chat because I know this is something you'd find extremely interesting if you haven't seen this bill. Sale of electrical assisted bicycle requirement. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but it just shows the nature of the government, how ridiculous they are. This bill requires a seller of an electrical assisted bicycle must make certain disclosures to the purchaser regarding the characteristics of this electrical assisted bicycle. So they have to put this labeling, they have to put these stickers, and they have to explain what this electric bicycle does. It's totally and utterly ridiculous. It's totally unnecessary. This is totally that parenting thing, like we talked about it with some of our with our guests earlier, where it's like, oh well, we need the state government to make sure that these e-bicycle sellers are providing accurate information to the people, and it can't be falsely labeled as an electrical assisted bicycle. People are going to get confused about what they're buying, so it's our government's job to fix it. So totally ridiculous bill. I don't obviously a bad bill, but any thoughts on this one, Hannah?
That's a lot.
All right. Yeah, there's enough there. But really it's dumb bill. And it's like, come on, people. This is what they're doing down there. They want to regulate and control every aspect of our lives. House Bill 1241, also in the House Energy and Environment Committee, public accessibility of emissions records. Now, this one I thought was absolutely and utterly ridiculous as well. So, under current law, the Air Quality Control Commission is tasked with developing an effective air quality control program, including adopting rules necessary to carry out the program. This bill requires a person that owns, leases, operates, controls, or supervises a building, structure, facility, or installation that emits or may emit an air pollutant to maintain records that will help the public determine whether the owner or operator is in compliance with rules establishing applicable air quality control regulations. So, I mean, here you go. You have businesses operating, and now they have to keep extra records. They have to track their emissions and their possible emissions and have these things on file for the public. I mean, of course, it's going after oil and gas, which is suffering tremendously right now in Colorado. Of course, they're going after manufacturing. They're going after power producers. It's just another, they're sending us back to the dark ages. What do you think, Hannah?
So my bestie is a co-sponsor of this bill, Lorena Garcia. I am not surprised. I mean, and look at Lisa Cutter, Kathy Kipp, Bob Martin. These are some of the worst legislators, right, that we have. So of course they're going to bring some really god awful legislation. They did not disappoint on that mark. And as a gas and oil family and understanding like emissions and things like that, it's just BS, and it's going to further destroy that industry. And so all of it's just BS.
100%. That's their goal, I think, is to destroy the industry and put us back in the dark ages.
Yes.
But let's move on. Also, Wednesday, a really interesting committee hearing on Wednesday, March 5th, upon adjournment of the Senate Committee Room 352. Thought both of these bills were really interesting to people out there. And folks, I know there's a lot of this, but this is what's going on in the state capitol. This is the stuff you don't hear about on the news. This is information that affects all of us here in Colorado. But I saw some controversy on this one today online. Senate Bill 169, the restaurant meals program. So, do you think people who receive food stamps, the SNAP Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, do you think they should be able to use the SNAP food stamps basically to buy restaurant food, to go to the restaurants and eat it in restaurants? That's what this bill would do.
So I've been on food stamps. I had a real rough start in life. So no. And here's why. Because there you're going to see a lot more waste on junk food and that kind of a thing. And yes, if you're receiving my tax dollars, I have every right to decide what you are going to eat with them, right? That's just the nature of that beast. And if you don't like it, I don't know what to tell you. Get off other people's tax dollars. And maybe that doesn't sound very kind, but like I said, I've been on food stamps. I think about the girls that I was in program with at the homeless shelter I lived at. And their favorite thing to do would be to go to the gas station and use their food stamps to buy gas station food on their breaks. And it was not healthy, friends. Not that I want to enforce health on people. I don't. But at the same time, I don't want to see my tax dollars squandered on more BS because I'm just tired of that. Is this a small thing that would be BS? Yeah, but I don't like it, so I don't like it. And that's just my perspective.
Yeah, totally agree. I think it's a bad bill. Let's move on to House Bill 1009, vegetative fuel mitigation, and appreciate you sharing the story there too, Hannah, giving that perspective on it. This one maybe isn't as bad as people expect it to be, but I think it's worse than people expected, is what I mean to say. House Bill 1009, vegetative fuel mitigation. So of course, fires are a problem in Colorado, obviously, but basically they want to create this new system in which there's this international wildland urban interface code that who knows who even created that. But of course, now people in Colorado have to follow that with this wildfire resiliency code board, following these international dictates about how people should be using their land and the means of fighting fires, this and that. Don't get me wrong, nobody wants to see fires, but at the same time, look at this thing. They're going to create this whole new regulatory system, basically. So This bill allows a fire protection district in certain metropolitan districts to establish a program requiring the removal of vegetative fuel on private property. So they're going after private property owners, of course. It doesn't say there's any state fiscal impacts. I don't know if I completely agree with that. But basically, it would require the removal of dead or dry plant material from private property that can burn and contribute to a fire, leaves, grass, shrubs, ground litter, dead leaves, fallen pine needles. And there's this 2024 International Wildland Urban Interface Code, blah, 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 that people have to follow. And the district may assess a fine for owners and occupiers of private property that fail to remove vegetative fuel from the property at least 10 days after a second written notice. So, I mean, you can imagine what's going to happen here. They're going to have all these little busybodies going around to people's private property, telling them that you have too much vegetative fuel, whatever that means, up to this international code. And then people are going to potentially get fined, potentially lose their property, and go from there. So bad news, I would say, all around. Any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, you're like, who designed this international blah blah blah? I think his name is George Soros. Um, this is another interesting thing from California to here. California is always on fire. Um, and it's a lot of times lack of mismanagement of forests and all. I lived in gold country. I also lived down in Southern California. They have a lot of fires there. Most of it's mismanagement, and I would say that from what I'm seeing of our forestry now compared to what it was when I was a kid, we are falling more into that mismanagement of forestry in the name of environmentalism that's going to contribute to fires that spread rapidly versus private property where people are actually living. I think it's interesting because now we're seeing all these fires pop up everywhere and all these weird bills that are all over the country trying to like regulate things and prevent things. I don't know. It just seems really sus. And I really dislike the whole who designed that code.
Definitely, yeah. So this bill has made it through the House. It's now in the Senate. Maybe the Senate will moderate it a little bit. We'll see. But this is going to be Wednesday in the Agriculture and Natural Resources Senate Committee, room 352. So check that one out if you're interested, folks. Got a few more to fly through here, so I'll try and move quick. But the Business Affairs and Labor Committee, Wednesday, House Committee Room 112, House Bill 1180, prohibiting pet animal sales in public spaces. I don't know about anybody else, but up here in Greeley, I do see people in the parking lot selling little puppies and stuff like that out of the back of their car. I don't necessarily have a problem with it. I believe in the free market. I understand there's a bunch of issues there. Don't get me wrong. I know there's animal abuse issues. There's other types of issues as well. But nonetheless, I don't think it's the proper role of government to be prohibiting, basically outlawing people from being able to sell animals in public spaces. I don't know. What do you think, Hannah?
I dislike this. I know that their intention is probably good, but I'm going to say that from what I know about Colorado and the animal shelter, animal trafficking that goes on here in Colorado, this is only going to further strengthen that. And if you don't know about that, I encourage you all to really look into that. I think this bill is just going to create stronger government enforced animal trafficking.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to create more criminals. People are just trying to sell dogs. Maybe they have their own little puppy mill at their house. Maybe the animals are being treated well, but a blanket ban like this, I think, is bad news. Wednesday, House Committee Room 112, Business Affairs and Labor. Let's go ahead and move on. In that same committee, House Bill 1240, protections for tenants with housing subsidies. So here we go, another anti-landlord kind of scheme. So this bill would basically make it harder to evict people who are not paying their rent if they're living there with housing subsidies. So, of course, what's that going to do? It's going to make landlords less likely to rent to people with housing subsidies. That's probably going to be illegal if it's not already. They're going to force people to bring in these people that have housing subsidies, and then, of course, regulate them, have it so they can't leave. Fees can't be over $20 for a late fee, but basically creating an unfair housing practice to try and get somebody out of your property. I mean, this is one of those anti-landlord bills that's only going to decrease the supply of rental properties and make it harder for people to want to rent their property out. So I think it's a bad bill overall. House Bill 1240. Any thoughts?
I agree with all of that. All of it. It's terrible.
Gotcha. All right, let's move on here. We're still on Wednesday, folks, on the House Judiciary or Senate Judiciary Committee, excuse me, LSBB. That's Legislative Service Building across the street from the state capitol. Senate Bill 183, the coverage for pregnancy-related services. So here we go, folks. If you remember last year, December in 2024 election, voters approved Amendment 79, which repealed, here we go, repealed the state constitutional amendment prohibiting the use of tax money for abortions. That's what happened last year. Now we're seeing the first legislation come out about it, at least the first I've seen. So basically, this bill will expand the definition of family planning related services to include abortion care. So there's people who are on Medicaid will be able to get abortions on their Medicaid plan. So this was the plan of the state government all along, and all these people who were pushing Amendment 79 last year. But you know, whether regardless of your thoughts on abortion, the idea that we're going to have state funded, we're going to have Medicaid funded abortions under taxpayer the taxpayers paying for kind of doesn't make me very happy. What do you think about this one, Hannah?
Well, this is Margaret Sanger's wet dream. So who's on Medicaid? So who did, I'm just going to ask questions and y'all can just answer this for yourselves. Who did Margaret Sanger want to keep from reproducing? Those same people are the people on Medicaid. Now the government's paying for those. And, you know, all these people want to talk about race, inclusion, diversity, equity, all of these things. Well, probably we ought to look into Medicaid statistics then. Who really is the victim and who they really want to keep from having children? It's almost like they're trying to control people from having children. And they're pushing for these lower income people to not have kids. And that's been like, that was Margaret Sanger's whole goal. She also tied race into that. So that's an interesting conversation.
Definitely. Yeah, taxpayer funded abortions for people on Medicaid. Here they come. Absolutely ridiculous. Senate Bill 183, folks, being heard this Wednesday, March 5th, and the Senate Judiciary Committee at 1:30 p.m. Show up for that one if that's your issue. Moving on, Wednesday, 1:30 p.m., Senate Committee Room 352 in the Transportation and Energy Committee. I just wanted to bring this one up. Natalie, if you're watching out there, I know you're paying attention to this one. This is the big RTD bill. I don't want to get into the details of it. I just want to make sure people are aware of it. If you do care about RTD, you care about public transit, this is the bill to pay attention to. Just scrolling down, look at how many things this bill does tons and tons and tons of stuff. There's probably some good in here, maybe some not so good, but nonetheless, just at least want to bring it up to people. RTD has been a total disaster. Of course, there's this anti-car agenda in our state government, and RTD is extremely dangerous, and a lot of people don't like taking it. So we'll see if this Senate Bill 161 actually does create some reform. Anything you think about this one, Hannah?
You know how you guys hate it? So, and it's pretty dangerous. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say when this bill passes, it's just going to get worse.
I'm sure it's, hard to believe it's going to actually make things better, right? But I wanted to get that in front of people's eyes. We want to empower you as individuals here. We want to make you the most well-informed people in Colorado with what's going on through our state legislature. We're doing the work so you don't have to. And Wednesday, some really interesting bills here. Really wanted to bring this up. Gosh, and it's getting so late, but I hope people are paying attention because these are some very interesting bills. House Bill 1251, parental consent to treatment of a minor from Representative Bottoms here. This bill would require parental consent before a minor may obtain medical services. Now, there's probably people out there, if you haven't been paying attention to politics in recent years, you'd say, I thought that would already be the case. I really expected that parents would have to consent to children getting medical services. But as we know, that is not the case. 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 16-year-olds here in Colorado can have radical medical procedures done to them, life-changing medical procedures done to them without parental consent. So this bill, I think, is a good one. These are kids. And yeah, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I support it.
So 1251 would love to see people support that one down there. A good parental rights bill this Wednesday, March 5th, 1:30 p.m. House Committee Room 112. Pay attention to that, folks. I know it's a lot. There's so much going on, but definitely want to inform you. Here's another one from Scott Bottoms. So here's his anti-abortion bill, House Bill 1252 in that same committee. Basically would concern the regulation of medical facilities that perform abortions and during the first trimester only. This bill would require the Department of Public Health and Environment to annually license and to establish and enforce standards for the operation of medical facilities that perform medical or surgical induced abortions during the second or third trimester. Okay, there you go. So pretty interesting stuff. Anything on that one?
I mean, I support it.
Yeah, and we know this bill's not going anywhere, but Representative Bottoms is fighting the good fight, doing what he can, trying to stand up for the life of the unborn down there. Let's look at House Bill 1270, patients' right to try individualized treatments. Thought that this might be a good one to expand medical freedom. So, concerning granting eligible patients the right to try individualized investigational medical treatments, and I think I said parents earlier, but patients' rights to try individual treatments. So, of course, if somebody should have the ability to try any type of medicine they want. Of course, I think we can all agree with that if we believe in liberty and freedom and self-ownership. And so this bill would expand that. Probably doesn't go far enough just because that's what all these bills do, but nonetheless, it's a bipartisan bill. I think there's good opportunity here. You have some of the most powerful Republicans, the Minority Leader Rose Puglisi and Senator Kirkmeyer on it, and then you have Lindsey Gilchrist, who's a freshman, and Lindsey Doherty, who's been new in the Senate, but was in the House previously. So people who have been around, who potentially, if people are going to get this through, hopefully they can get this one through and allow people to have more medical procedures that might be a little bit risky. What do you think?
I really like it. My everybody knows my husband is very ill and unresponsive to most medical treatment and just kind of is hanging on. If he were able to try something new, like I need for him to be able to try that, whatever that is at whatever risk, because it's already pretty bad. So I think giving patients and people in my situation the ability to seek whatever treatment, even if it's, radical, they should at least be able to try it. It's their life, it's their health. They're the ones putting themselves at risk knowingly.
Definitely. And this bill, it's medicine that is based on a patient's genetic profile. So how interesting is that? But yeah,
Very.
definitely a good bill. Would love to see this one get supported, folks. If you're in a situation where this matters to you, definitely speak Wednesday, March 5th. Reach out to the committee members ahead of time. Let them know. Reach out to your state reps, your state senator. I want to talk about 1253 from Representative Bradley here, Youth Health Protection Act. The bill prohibits an individual to perform or cause or assist in the performance of any medical procedure or medical treatment that furthers a minor's desire to present or appear in a manner that is inconsistent with their minor's sex. So this is to protect kids from making life-altering decisions, including surgery, hormone blockers, and other things that could totally change the course of their entire life when they're a young person and maybe don't know any better. So nonetheless, allowing parents, guardians, and legal custodians to withhold consent for treatment, activity, or mental health care services that is designed to mess with that sex and gender role. So interesting bill. I think this is a good one. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think it's very consistent with Rep. Bradley, with what she introduces, with her platform, with what she advocates in her position and what she was elected to do. So I think that this is important. I know, of course, it's not going to pass, but I think it's worth trying. And so I think it's important.
Definitely important bill. Would love to see people show up and support that one. Would love to see people provide a remote testimony. These legislators need to know if people are doing the right thing down there. So we're still on Wednesday, folks, March 5th, in the House Judiciary Committee and the Old State Library, 1:30 p.m. I'm really excited about this bill from Representative Luck. Liability when means of self-defense is prohibited. This is House Bill 1232. So basically, if you're not allowed to have a firearm on your person and you are harmed, the people who own that property are liable for the harm that was caused to you. So I think that's a good thing. So this basically is an anti-gun free zone bill. If they prevent you from having the ability to defend yourself, say you go to a movie theater, for example, to use that infamous example, and they say, no, these guns are banned here, and you get harmed, well, you should be able to, and you would have been able to carry a firearm, defend yourself, then, maybe they should be liable. So kind of like this idea. Of course, the idea of private property rights is important if somebody wants to do what they want with their property, but nonetheless, I think it's potentially a good bill. What do you think?
Yes, it's absolutely great. There's not much I can add, but it's excellent for individual rights and property rights.
Yes, I would think so. So House Bill 1232 being heard in that same committee. So folks, this is a two gun bills. This is the big one everybody's been talking about is House Bill or Senate Bill 3 in the Judiciary Committee Wednesday, March 5th. I know there's the big rally at the state capitol starting about noon. I know a lot of people are going to be down there, but of course, Senate Bill 3, the worst gun ban in Colorado history, basically a gun registration scheme where you have to get licensed, you have to pay to exercise your rights. Absolutely unconstitutional, immoral, and unethical piece of legislation from some of our worst legislators Colorado's ever seen. These people do not deserve your respect. They do not deserve your kindness. They do not deserve anything except to be banished from our state and driven out um, with any by any pretty much any means possible. You can read through the bill is updated, so I know a lot of people have questions about what's changed with this bill. You can read through everything in italics just for your reference is something that was amended. So that's the amendment to this bill that was heavily amended there on at the last minute on this one. So yeah, of course, folks, show up, speak out. There's a lot of people talking about Senate Bill 3. That's Wednesday, March 5th at 1:30 p.m. So hopefully we'll see a big push on that one.
Yep, I'm expecting it. Yep.
A great bill, great bill. This is the one I alluded to earlier, talking to Senator Pelton, government transparency laws, House Bill 1242. Really good bill here. This is the one that I know John Caldera, the Independence Institute, the Colorado Freedom of Information Coalition, a lot of the journalists, the League of Women Voters. I mean, it's just totally this bipartisan group of people who are very concerned that our state government is trying to infringe on Colorado sunshine laws, open meetings laws, and make our government less transparent. House Bill 1242 is a reaction to that. It is to basically repeal Senate Bill 157 that passed last year. Jared Polis signed that into law as fast as he could, basically, which makes it harder for the public to know what's going on in our state government. So this is a great bill. I wish we had more time to spend on it, but we still have more to talk about. Definitely check this one out, folks. If you can show up and speak out on House Bill 1242, please do. This is one of the best pro liberty bills we've seen this year. Government transparency is key to a functioning representative system. So get out there, House Bill 1242. Any thoughts on government transparency, Hannah?
Well, I love to see it.
Definitely love to see it. So this is just reminding people Thursday, March 6th in the State Civic Military and Veterans Affairs Committee, LSBA, upon adjournment there. So check that out. Definitely adjournment of the State House. All right, moving on. This one really makes me pretty mad. In the House Business Affairs and Labor Committee, House Bill 1262. Gosh, this is all this week, folks. This is all this week. This is what they're trying to do to us here in Colorado. It's insane. How can anybody keep up? Regulate private security officers and agencies. So they want to create a state board of private security services in the Department of Regulatory Affairs to regulate individuals and businesses that provide private security services. So here you go, another occupational license. You have to be licensed and you can't be a security officer unless you're fingerprinted. You've gone through training, you're registered, all this ridiculousness. Absolutely and utterly stupid. Really bothered by this one to create a new regulatory scheme around people who just want private security or have a private security agency. So bad news. House Bill 1262, definitely bad news.
It's kind of making private security public, which is thereby the opposite of actually what that is. So, yeah, I hate this.
Yeah, absolutely horrible bill. I mean, Weissman has to be one of the worst legislators I've ever seen, and Marbury is just a total goon down there. Yeah, it makes me sick to my stomach. All right, a good bill. Happy to see this one. This is also Thursday in the House Business, Labors, and Affairs Committee, House Committee Room 112, House Bill 1237, soft closing of alcohol beverage establishments. It's the smallest amount of victory we could possibly see for liberty. Basically, Colorado's a 2 a.m. cutoff law now here. They would move that to 2:30 a.m. So, they're throwing some crumbs to us peasants here. Absolutely stupid. We shouldn't have a alcohol cutoff bill, a law, I think, but this House Bill 1237 at least moves us a half hour in the right direction. Basically, it would current law prohibits a person licensed to sell alcoholic beverages at the retail level from selling, serving, and distributing malt, vinous, or spirituous liquors between 2 a.m. and 7:30. This would change this. The bill allows a licensee to allow customers to consume malt, vinous, or spirit liquors from 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. if they stop selling these at 2:30 and they remove everything out of there by 3. So ridiculous, but nonetheless, it's a half hour in the right direction.
A blind squirrel finds a nut every now and again.
Definitely, definitely. So moving on Thursday in the House Education Committee, House Committee Room 107, 1:30 p.m. Healthy School Meals for All program. I wanted to bring this up. Everybody might remember in 2023, FF, Proposition FF, to create this school lunches program that is now completely out of money, of course, because it cost way more money than they expected. Big surprise there. Government can't do math. So now, of course, they need to go back to the voters and ask for more money to go to this school lunch program. And that's what this bill is all about. So I at least want to get this in front of people's attention. People need to be paying attention to this, but it's absolutely stupid. That they're pushing this ballot measure through. They're trying to push another ballot measure through to take more of our money to feed these school kids. I'm sorry, it's not the responsibility of taxpayers to do this.
No, this is ridiculous. But my bestie, she does those kinds of things.
So this bill is being heard there Thursday in the House Education Committee at 1:30 p.m. So check that out if you're interested. Another one here, financial literacy graduation requirement. I saw this one in the news, House Bill 1192. There's Hartsook right there and some others. But basically, this bill would require the submission of a basically where it is require successful completion of a course in financial literacy as a condition of high school graduation. I don't know. Government schools are garbage anyway. I think I don't know that this is a great thing. I don't think it's going to make a difference. I think it's not going to really improve society whatsoever. What they should do is have to have economic literacy for people to get in our state government. That's what they should do. But unfortunately, we're not at that point. But there we go. House Bill 1192 requiring financial literacy as a graduation requirement. I guess it's okay. Whatever. What do you think?
Um, well, it's actually not ever going to do anything. It's not enforceable. So you can't legislate what somebody graduate and knows. As a home educator, I know lots about that topic. And my kids do graduate with financial literacy because they have jobs before they graduate, and I teach them. But I digress. There's just no way they can guarantee kids who are graduating are going to have financial literacy. Just because they could pass a class doesn't mean that's actually true. And the schools in Colorado are already failing, so why are we going to continue to try and regulate them through legislation? They're failing. That's not the way we're going to fix it.
Yeah, this is just a feel good bill that these legislators can say, oh, wow, look how much we're helping everybody and this and that, but blah, blah, blah. It doesn't do anything. Same committee, this education committee. I really want to get this in front of people. House Bill 1250, gun violence prevention of parents and students. So, of course, they want to hammer home anti gun propaganda. That's my perspective. That's my suspicion with this bill. Hammer anti gun propaganda to parents and schools and give them gun violence prevention materials and all this and that about how terrible and evil guns are. So they're going to provide materials in a written electronic format to students' parents and to put on the local education provider's website about the gun office's gun violence prevention materials. So yeah, I mean, probably a stupid bill. It's not going to do anything anyway, but nonetheless, at least wanted to mention it.
Yeah, definitely. I just like this a lot. It's just propaganda.
Yep, 100%. And then I just wanted to bring this up. I just wanted to bring up so Friday, there's no bills being heard, but there is the Commission on Property Taxes. I know that's something good friend Natalie Metten's been paying really close attention to. She basically attends all of those meetings. So I at least want to get in front of people's eyes that 12:30 on Friday in the Old State Library, there's the Commission on Property Taxes. So it's something you could at least tune into if you're interested. Obviously, the property tax issue over the last 2 years generated that special session. We've seen ballot measures. It's a major issue. We can't let it fly under the radar. And if we can put a little liberty perspective on that, then I think that's a good thing. So at least want to get that in front of people.
Yes. And Natalie Menton's work on all of that is so incredible. She's definitely an unsung hero, although we sing her praises, I guess.
Definitely. So Hannah, I still got more to go through. Can you stay on or do you need to jump off? It's up to you.
I'm powering through it with you, apparently.
Okay. Awesome. We'll appreciate it. Perfect. So we got bills we've been tracking. We're going to fly through these, folks. So there's bill. That was just what was going on this week. Everything we talked about in the last 2 hours was just what's happening this week in committee hearings in the state legislature. We didn't even talk about the Senate and the House as a whole. That's how crazy it is. But there's bills we've been tracking that maybe we didn't talk about tonight. So this is the kind of the master list of some of the bigger bills related to our liberty that we've seen go through the legislature this year. So this is kind of that master list, just to repeat myself, of some of the bigger bills. So House Bill 105. This is to get Sundance film festivals here by giving them $35 million in tax incentives. It did pass two committees in the House. It's moving on to House Appropriations. It'll probably fail, hopefully, because of the budget deficit. We'll see. And Hannah, I'm going to fly through these, so interrupt me if there's something you're interested in. House Bill 1010, prohibiting price gouging in sales of necessities. Absolutely stupid prohibitionist bill of economic illiteracy, being heard Monday on the House floor at 10 a.m., March 3rd. So tomorrow, from when we're recording this, we'll see the debate over House Bill 1010. Absolutely ridiculous. Then we'll move on to the Senate. House Bill 1031, interested in this one, law enforcement whistleblower protection. I think that could be a good one. It's assigned to the House Judiciary, no date yet. I'm sure there's a lot of negotiations there with the police. House Bill 1040, the adding nuclear energy as clean energy, that did pass the House. Just to give people that update, is moving on to the Senate. Will be heard Monday, March 10th in the Transportation and Energy Committee. So if you're watching still, check that one out. House Bill 1067, we talked about criminal asset forfeiture. That's this Tuesday. Senate Bill 20, where it turns the Attorney General on landlord and tenant and law enforcement. That was laid over in Judiciary. Apparently, the amendment failed. There's they're reworking that one, making some negotiations. So we'll see what happens to that. Protections against child rape. That's the one that Representative Brantley talked about when she was on before. I mean, it's insane that somebody can commit sexual assault on a child and get probation. It's insane. This is being heard March 11th in the Judiciary, so we'll talk about this one again next week, folks. Senate Bill 5, that's a union bill. It's generated a potential ballot measure to turn Colorado into a full right to work state. Worker protection, collective bargaining, eliminating that second vote for union formation. That's going to be heard Thursday, March 13th in the House Business Affairs and Labor Committee. It already passed the Senate, so that was the tougher one for it to get through. So I'm sure it'll fly through the House. We'll see. Senate Bill 3, we talked about Wednesday in House Judiciary. Senate Bill 33, this is a disappointing bill from Weinberg to prohibit new liquor licensed drugstores. It did pass the Senate. It's in the House, assigned to the House Business Affairs and Labor Committee. Going to be heard Thursday, March 13th. Senate Bill 76 got delayed. It was supposed to be heard this week. This is that terrible marijuana bill that I've been given a hard time to Hartsook and Pelton about. One of the reasons they want to come talk to us. I absolutely hate this bill, but I'm happy to hear that it'll be amended. But that's pushed back a week to March 11th, Tuesday, in the Business, Labor, and Technology Committee in the Senate. Senate Bill 86, a horrible bill. I really appreciate Val's comments in the chat earlier calling this one out. I think it's a disaster. This is it was interesting because you had that exchange with Hartsook about buying drugs online, and that's the idea with this bill. They're going to protect kids somehow. Yep.
I testified, and I testified against that bill, so that's fun. And also the governor, his office is against this bill, didn't even offer amendments, said nope. So, and you know what I did as a kid, I didn't even have a cell phone. I didn't have a computer. I didn't have anything. So if kids want to get things, they will. So that's just what they're going to do. Ask 100%. Me about that.
So this bill passed. This bill passed the Senate, is now in the House, assigned to the Health and Human Services Committee in the House. Has not gotten assigned a date yet. The Colorado vending of digital assets, that's the Bitcoin ATM bill, Senate Bill 79, passed the Senate. It's going to be in the House. No committee assignment yet. Senate Bill 77, an absolute horrendous bill. One of the disappointments of Matt Soper this year, to make it harder for individuals to get access to government records through CORA, the Colorado Open Records Act. This is the bill that treats mainstream journalists like Kyle Clark with special privilege, giving him 2 more days to get to requirement so he gets information ahead of citizen journalists or people out there in the public. Terrible, terrible bill. Senate Bill 77 passed the Senate and is introduced now in the House. Senate Bill 72, I really wanted to beat up Senator Pelton on this one. This is that regulation of kratom bill. Did pass the Finance Committee, is now on to appropriations. So we'll see that one, what happens with that one. House Bill 1006, that's one, Hannah, you were mentioning to Hartsook about allowing school districts to use their property for solar gardens or affordable housing. That did pass the House, is introduced in the Senate, assigned to Senate Education, no date yet. House Bill 1133, requirements for sale of firearms ammunition. Absolutely horrific bill that bans the purchase of ammunition for anybody under the age of 21. Passed the House, is now in the Senate, assigned to the Senate State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee. Let's hope it dies there. Doubtful, but I hope so. We need some pressure there. No date assigned yet. House Bill 1127, the register and drive surplus military vehicles, that did pass 2 committees, is now into appropriations. House Bill 1093, limitations on local anti-growth land use policies. I don't like that. I like the idea that local governments can make up their own decisions, that we have this decentralization of political power. Did pass the House, is now in the Senate, local government housing. It is being heard this Thursday in the local government housing. Just didn't bring it up because we talked about it previously, and we had enough to talk about. House Bill 1113, limit turf in new residential development. This will prohibit apartment complexes from having grass, basically, because of the water issues. This is going to be heard Monday, March 3rd on the House floor. Did pass out of committee. House Bill 1100, requirements for filing certain vacancies in office. We did talk about that one. That's Representative Luck's bill being heard Monday as well. The county lodging tax expansion, House Bill 1247, we talked about being heard this Tuesday. The Colorado Anti-Discrimination Act, just a dumb bill. House Bill 1239, passed judiciary onto appropriations. House Bill 1242, talked about that. That's a good bill being heard this Thursday. That's a transparency bill. The gun show bill, this bill, they want to try and shut down gun shows in Colorado. Of course they do. Passed out of committee, being heard Monday on the House floor at 10 a.m. So pay attention to that one, folks. This Monday, 1238. 1255, the exercise conscious being heard this Thursday. We talked about that one. The parental consent to treatment of a minor. We talked about that one. So a lot of these we did talk about. The soft closing of alcohol beverage. We talked about. I thought this one's interesting. House Bill 1243, peace officer questions during traffic stop. It would stop a police officer from asking a person if they know why they pulled you over, because it's kind of the self-incriminating type thing. I kind of like that. So that's being heard Wednesday, March 12th. We'll talk about that next week. House Bill 1190, expanding the Colorado Cottage Foods Act, the tamale bill. Of course, we talked about that one. We talked about the liability of self-defense one. The cultivated meats also this week, the smart meter. So a lot is going on this week. We already talked about the regulate private security, the state regulation, reducing the cost of housing, Senate Bill 131 from Senator Lundeen. That one they took off the calendar, so I don't know what's going on with it. I don't know too much about it, but it's introduced in the Senate. We'll see what happens. Then there's Baisley's FWERA bill, Senate Bill 139, being heard this Tuesday. And now here's the new one they introduced just this last week, basically going after rideshare programs, cracking down on Uber and Lyft because there's some bad actors or some criminals who are using that to hurt people. So of course they want to create the system where there's got to be either cameras and facial recognition and logging in and all these extra requirements that are only going to increase the cost and drive out these businesses from Colorado. So bad news there, I would say. Now here's our dead bill list. This list is continuing to grow. Recently died House Bill 1089, the signature verification requirements. 1144 died last week, the retail property crime bill. The premium cigar excise tax decrease was dead. Repealing the firearm deal requirements dead. 1074, of course, the egg laying bill dead. 1051, the recycled paper carryout bag dead. 1134, insect production for human consumption was killed. 1143, the open source software and voting killed. Non-citizen voter registration cancellation, Senate Bill 57 was killed. House Bill 1044, the local funding to create new fees on our vehicle registration for vulnerable road users. That was killed, but they're going to bring it back in another form. The trafficking minor for abortion and transgender care killed. House Bill 1140 killed. House Bill 1144 killed. 1106 killed, and Senate Bill 47 killed. And I think that's all of them. Yep. Get to the end of the template there. So awesome. So there we go, folks. Really appreciate everybody hanging in with us. A lot of stuff, a lot going on. And really appreciate everybody taking the time to tune in with us tonight. We had a very interesting conversation. There's so much going on, and this is recorded on YouTube, so you can go back and look at any of this information later. But we'll try and keep you updated about what's going on down at the state capitol. So, Hannah, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, it's just once again, it's good to come and get really familiar with what's going on down at the legislature. Even if I'm not on, I'm always watching so that I know what I want to sign up for the week, because it's my goal to do a minimum of 2 bills a week, and oftentimes I'm hitting 4. So this week I'll be doing at least 4, potentially 5. And I just think it's really great for building connections with our legislators and showing up and supporting the people we really like to support, and holding accountable the people that we also like to support when they kind of deviate from that path of liberty. So I'm just thankful for all of your hard work, Brandon, putting it together and then presenting it, right? It's a huge job and you do it so well and keep it really, really engaging and not boring. So that's a nice little balance on top of all of that hard work and that you do so well. And it's excellent to be able to talk about the work Natalie Menton does and everyone that's, doing their little part here and there. So this is incredible and I'm so thrilled by your success.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Hannah. Keep up the good work. The LPCO has been more powerful than ever before, so really excited about that. And just appreciate everybody joining us. The interest we're getting, like I said earlier, we're getting like 300 views a week on these videos, which is pretty cool. Hopefully, we can generate some people to show up and testify, get involved. It's a participatory sport, folks. We're going to create a free state. We're going to win in the end, but it's going to be a lot of work getting there. But show up, get involved. Let's have a voice in our state government. There's not a lot of people who are involved, so even a small group of organized people can have an outsized influence, and that's what we're trying to do here. So really appreciate everybody. Let's keep fighting for freedom. We'll see you next week, and yeah, keep fighting the good fight. Awesome. Well, take care.